Hello, this is the conference for a group of people that I, Charles Stewart, am trying to organize as a Supreme Court of Law for the United States of America. I believe we've got the right to do this because presently there is no Supreme Court of Law for the United States of America. The present so-called Supreme Court of the United States is de facto. It's Roman Empire municipal, and we can touch on that later on. But that's what we're doing under the group of people that see some merit in the outside-the-box ideas that I'm trying to promote here and are joining with me in these efforts, at least somewhat. And hereunder, we are moving forward. And there. My notes. Our traditional process here is to open with a word of prayer. Because this is a spiritual battle, it's about integrity. It's about people working together in honesty and in a belief that this world is not all there is. There is a higher accountability to the universal laws of truth and justice. And hereunder, many of us find the Abrahamic God of the Israelite tradition to be, and the Bible to be profoundly influential, and we do like to petition under similar wording as Christians usually profess. And hereunder, if you'll all indulge me for a moment, please, true God Yahweh Jehovah, Jehovah of armies, please send your angels with your Holy Spirit to help us to accomplish good work here in this conference today. Help us, please, to all keep our voices humble and respectful and working towards righteousness and truth and justice and humility and not resorting to any harsh words unless it's absolutely necessary, because it's obvious that somebody is not at all concerned about righteousness or truth objectively. And we're optimistic that nobody in this conference is going to even attend that is inclined in these directions, so that hopefully our conference will go smoothly here. Please, your precious Son, Jesus Yeshua, is known as the Prince of Peace. Help us to follow his example so that we may promote peace and justice and truth in everything we do. Hereunder, we conclude this prayer supplication in deep respect. In the name of your precious Son, Jesus Yeshua. Amen. And I had my wording up.
And Chris has joined us. Greetings.
Chris made it in. Excellent, Chris. I had all my other tabs open, but I don't have. There we are. Okay. Now I'm on to speed. Item 1, opening prayer. Item 2, new conference hosting and scheduling. Control. Dang. Our new conference and hosting scheduling policies. As many of you are aware, there's a bit of polarity between our right wing and our left wing factions, and so I have decided to split our two conferences here so that there's one conference for right-wing people who are inclined in that direction, and another for people that are inclined in a left-wing direction. And hopefully, I'm optimistic that this will reduce the conflicts. I'm hopeful that both conferences will become more productive in this manner because we can focus on the grassroots levels of organizing rather than getting involved in big philosophical debates. And our Monday evening conferences every other Monday are hosted by myself, Charles Stewart, and Michael Zarzano, whereas these Saturday conferences, every other Saturday is what we're doing now, are being led by myself, Charles Stewart, and Lewis Hammond. And a few notes here. Each of the conferences are being devoted to organizing more the people in the faction that they seem to strongly identify with. And this Saturday conference is more devoted for people on the left wing, but as my notes indicate in Section 2A here, people of right-wing inclination and honorable intentions are welcome to participate. But please note that all seriously conflicted debates will be at least temporarily resolved in favor of the left wing. We're not going to tolerate a lot of philosophical debates between right and left wing here. That ultimate conflict will probably be resolved, hopefully, in some future conferences, but right now is not the time and place to do it. And keep alerted. If you're on our email list, you should be getting invitations to both conferences. I'm of the opinion that everybody on our email list is welcome to participate in both, but just please realize that if you're raising issues on one of the conferences that's not in harmonious with your right or left-wing philosophy, then you're probably going to have to wait until the conference that's more right or left-wing, harmonious with your own beliefs, in order to fully explore those, because it gets into too much conflict, and we're here to promote peace, and we can search for justice after peace, at least in these conferences. So, any comments or questions about that just basic simple thing about dividing between left and right wing here? Anybody?
I do, but I'd like to hear from anyone else first.
Okay, Lewis. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to say about the division between the right and the left wing in the conferences here?
Charles, Chris, I really hadn't planned on speaking on the call, but because we're kind of drawing two parallel lines, I'm not sure if that's quite descriptive of the multiple different levels of division that exist between several different factions that might generally be described as conservative, liberal, or social democracy, if you will. I'm not even sure those are clear enough delineators, but there seems to be a muddying of waters between all those different concepts on elements that are pertinent. And with that, that's my comment, and I thank you very much for Lewis yielding.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lewis. Did you want to carry on?
No, Charles. Do you want to respond to anything that Chris said?
Just that I do think that inherently there is a multitude of subdivisions in both left-wing and right-wing tendencies. But as the Democrat and Republican parties so clearly illustrate, there are major philosophical differences between two factions, and even though each of them are subdivided into a plethora of differing philosophical ideas and agendas, I think it is it does aid in clarity of thought and keeping the peace for rational discussion to recognize that there is a difference there at a fundamental level, and that it's conducive to keeping the peace to just bring separate groups, to give them their own separate space where they can focus on what's important to them instead of fighting with the other faction. So anyway, that would be my only response, Chris or Lewis, any comments or questions, or anybody else?
Hello, this is Vincent. May I?
Vincent, yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to see the logic. The Democrat and the Republicans is based on setting up the power structure for the election. One of the things after the election should be the movement towards unifying us collectively and becoming as one. So if we need to be moving towards that union, and I don't see the productiveness if we want to maintain the separateness, because we're talking about one constitution and we're supposed to be under. But if we keep this left-wing, right-wing faction going on, it's going to keep a divide and never heal. So if we don't move towards unifying what's going on and getting some clarity, then we're going to be lost. I yield.
Thank you, Vincent. We do need clarity, and I don't think you've been involved in our past conferences. They have got quite intense between our left-wing and right-wing polarity, and I'm not comfortable shutting down either of our left-wing leaders or our right-wing leaders, and I think that the policy that we're adopting here has a good chance of being productive. So while I appreciate your comments, I'm not inclined to change my beliefs about what the best remedy is to the conflicts that we've been suffering here, Vincent. But I am glad that we're doing video. I'd like to encourage everybody that's capable to go ahead and plug in a little bit of video. In the Zoom conferences, it seemed to be a little bit easier to do the video, and when we did the last Monday conference, I thought that we had some real good productive video. You can see so much more with body language and things with people. So anyway, I'm getting distracted. Lewis, or yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay, and Vincent, I appreciate your statements there. And in an ideal world that we're working towards, that would be the case. We are far from, however, an ideal world. As Charles has mentioned, well, first, I think that the splitting of the calls was absolutely necessary because we are not going in the same direction, to use the words of one of the participants on last Monday's call. Charles makes each of the calls available on YouTube for everyone to review. And one of the things that I shared with him that I was going to do, since our Wayne County calls are at the same date and time, here in Michigan, said I will listen to the recording and see if there is space for me on that call. Now, the call was a relatively good call, in my opinion, until the last 15 minutes, which at that time it began a Lewis bashing, which I'm still in question of, does it raise to the level of slander or not? But in the one statement that I agreed with came from Matt of Michigan, is that we're not going in the same direction. And one of the reasons is, outside of right-wing, left-wing, in my opinion, it was blatantly racist. So someone making racist remarks while claiming not to be racist seems paradoxical to me. One can be called out for racist remarks even if you have black friends or relatives that you cherish, or you donated to anti-racist causes in the past, or even if you've marched for civil rights. When you're making statements such as, I cannot live in a multicultural society, it has to be based on Western European civilization. There is no such thing as overt racism in this country. That statement was just made this past Monday. That statement right there, someone should Google it. You're online. Google, take a look at it. So, let's squash out willful ignorance. Statements such as stop living in the past, those are ridiculous. Racism is prevalent today. Lewis uses the race card too much. There is no such thing as using the race card too much for any man or woman of color. The issue of ethnicity which it is an error to call it race. In fact, that's racist. But I'm not going to get into, you know, the origins of the particular word. But in this country, one's ethnicity affects every facet of their life once they step out of their personal abode. Period. It's not close. It doesn't matter if we are discussing policing, the justice system, housing, the financial realm, corporate America, wages, insurance, medical care. Right now, down there in Texas, you've got a black woman that's being terrorized by a racist neighbor. When she called the sheriff countless times, they suggested to her that she goes and stays in a hotel until this blows over. 1 week ago, this past Monday, at an open carry march in Richmond, Virginia, where there were open carry, both white and black, the only ones that were harassed during this function were the black people that were openly carrying. And that was the purpose of the rally itself. It's done annually there in Richmond. This was done on the 18th of January. I'm not talking the past. I'm talking about right now. If one can actually say that they don't know what systemic racism is, again, you're online. Google it. Do not remain ignorant. Stop. So if there's a call that you need to separate a call with people that use phrases like doesn't want to hear all this crap about diversity and multiculturalism, and these type of things, when they actually make statements such as, to me, regarding Lewis directly, he's full of shit, he's not honest, when they have absolutely no evidence of that. He's extremely aggressive, he's inflammatory, he's insightful. This borderlines on slanderous. That's what it is. So we're not going in the same direction, and unfortunately, you know, there needed to be the split of calls. What is this white privilege bull crap? There is no such thing as white privilege. Look it up. If you don't know the definitions of the word, don't remain ignorant. Squash it out. Look it up. There are actually websites and blogs and educators where there are, and they're titled this. You can just type this in, if nothing else. Whites educating whites so people of color don't have to. Okay? Because it's not our job to do so. So it's not even enough simply not to be racist. If racism is to end, one must be an anti-racist. And if you don't know who they are and want to take some classes on how to, you know, what do you do? What are some of the steps that you do to become an anti-racist? Again, you're online now. Look it up. For years, the black community has complained about these things, abuses in the community, and without being taken seriously. Nothing has escalated now. Now we simply have cameras. So we have the ability to film murders. You see, that's what we have to do. We know the Pentagon has admitted that black soldiers were used as human guinea pigs in chemical experiments through World War II. 60,000 locked in gas chambers exposed to chemicals. It's been admitted. In the 50s, the CIA in the United States released 500,000 mosquitoes with yellow fever, okay, in the Florida's black communities, leading to a variety of illnesses and deaths. So they can study it. The government wanted to assess the use of mosquitoes as military weapons. During the 50s and the 60s, the poor neighborhoods in St. Louis, black neighborhoods, of course, were used in Cold War experiments in which the Army sprayed a radiation toxin, okay, in the air, again, to study the effects. They don't do this in white communities. They did this in black communities. So this continues to go on. So, you know, again, unfortunately, the call did need to be split up because it's an issue for one such as myself that looks to work and work with people, okay, of any ethnicity to stomp out racism and bring forward equality. And that's one of the reasons why in our efforts here on Michigan, I use this phrase in terms of re-inhabiting the republic, with the CK, by the way. But re-inhabit, reimagine, reorganize and reconstruct the republic, because that's what we're doing. And this time we're doing it correctly, which means inclusivity for all people, regardless of ethnicity. So with that, I yield.
And Louis, may I add more? Okay, I came in because I went to the Wayne County Assembly site by mistake, and I had to find it to go to this site because it was in a small print, but I got in toward the end. But again, me coming from, I'm Cuban, I'm Hispanic, and when I came to this country, you know, I was discriminated by both blacks and whites. So I'm coming with, you know, right now, we should not be participating in any conversation that goes contrary to unifying. If there's any faction of this group that don't feel like they want to belong to work with us, they're welcome to leave and continue their conversation elsewhere. Because we're all about unifying and working towards alleviating, because we talk about going back to the Constitution. That's actually a construct that's fortified in discrimination and racism, because it says in the 13th Amendment that there's no law that a white man needs to respect or honor for a black man. So we can write up all the law, but as long as that's still part of the Constitution, it don't apply to us, it omit us. So we need to actually take a look at what we're talking about going back to, because believe me, black people is not going back to slavery. I want to get that in everybody's mind, and Hispanic people are not going back to slavery. So what I really fear is that the times are changing, and we're moving towards a planet of people of color. Black people will be the majority soon. And I'm afraid that white people are just afraid that we're going to treat them like they treated us when they were the dominant. So I yield at that. And if we cannot move forward together, then separation is logical. I yield.
Let me respond to that, Vincent. Well, one thing I want to correct is when you say, what are we going back to? The reason that we chose to align ourselves with the particular Republic effort that we did, and there are multiple efforts attempting to do what we're doing. That's the one I think I heard Gary mention, the Union of States earlier. That's another group. It's different than our Republic with the CK. Our Republic stands on the Articles of Confederation, not the Constitution. Now, we recognize the Constitution, of course, as it is one of the organic laws, but we use the Constitution to constrain the government, the entity that we feel that it was written for. Okay, but by correcting our status. On some of these other calls, there's one man, at least on this call, that has used some terms that I'm very comfortable with and that most people don't use enough. And I think that was Paul of Georgia talking about the elective franchise and the duties and rights or responsibilities that come along with that elective franchise. It is the elective franchise that is under the Constitution, not the man or woman. That's one of the big reasons that I push the correction of political status, so one can control their elective franchise, which is a business trust organization. I don't call it the straw man. I like to stay away from that type of language. Let's call it what it is. The de facto is identified it, and it is a thing. It is a thing to be administered. Okay, so it's a part of a larger trust. Second thing I want to address, you mentioned that the world is becoming, majority of people of color. No. The world is. You're talking about the United States of America and how the dynamics and demographics are changing here. The globe is majority people of color. The ruling class, the money changers, okay, the money changers, that class which rules, which of course we know who they are, okay, they have convinced the population that they are the majority. They are not. This was the country that they were to be the majority of, which is why what you mentioned, which is one of the original sections to the 13th Amendment, it originally had about 20. Only 2 actually made it in. But what you mentioned was one of the ones that they took out. But it did give you an idea of the thought process at that time, just as the Dred Scott decision does. And so when we go back talking about re-inhabiting and reestablishing the republic, that was the last Supreme Court decision that even dealt with ethnicity, and it's never been corrected. And that's what they call themselves doing with the invention of the U.S. certificated person, the 14th Amendment citizen. So I just wanted to make hit those 2 points, because if we can look at it like that, this country has never dealt with human rights, only civil rights. So they've never dealt with the man or the woman. That's never been. They've always dealt with the thing, okay, in terms of the corporation. So with that, I yield.
Thanks, Lewis.
We're in the affirmative. We're on the same. We are talking the same language. Just listen to the conversation and it stirred me up. But exactly what you're saying. Under the Articles of Confederation, we were included, but under this Constitution, we're not. So where are we going? That needs to be talked about, and I stand corrected by what you say, and I'm in agreement with you. I yield.
If I may, this is Chris in Las Vegas. I certainly appreciate Lewis's comments because he's right on point. When we look at this totality of the issues in the big scheme of things, there's only 2 statuses that exist, perhaps 3, in America. The 2 primaries are slave and free, or bond and free. Trust indentured bond servant, in many cases, by voluntarism, whether you know it or not. At least that's what they like to pretend. And this is something on another platform that I do quite a bit of work with others on, to try to remove ourselves from the bonds of slavery through the 14th Amendment's constructs that effectively have made everyone in this particular country to be serfs under the Federal Slave Corporation. And this is a very dangerous concept that very few have done the due diligence that Lewis and others perhaps on this call have done to remove ourselves from this matrixal paradigm that we've all been cast into their presumptive servitude on. And this is a very, very important concept. In fact, in the Nationality Act of 1940, at Title 8 U.S.C. Section 1101, in particular at SEC, but more specifically in 1101, parenthetical small a, parenthetical 22, parenthetical A and B. A is a U.S. citizen, and B says, though not a U.S. citizen, owes permanent allegiance to a small s state. And this is the original constructs of the Republican form of government prior to the corporate D.C. franchise that was cast over this country under the pretextual bankruptcy. But perhaps we can go into this further in the future if you like. If you've got questions, I'll do what I can. But thank you for letting me chime in.
Thank you, Chris. We do have a nice number of people here. I appreciate your comments, Vincent, and Lewis, you're welcome to interrupt at any time, but absent Lewis trying to direct the conversation in a solid left-wing agenda here, I would like to open it up, maybe hear from Paul or Gary Bergman is new, and we've got a number of talented people. Nikki here. Lewis, is it good to kind of open up the discussion a little bit more? I think we're getting away from following strictly my conference agenda here. I think we've kind of jumped forward a little bit to the main issues concerning with racism here. But we're already there. We might as well continue on with it unless, Lewis, do you have any objection?
No objection. I've had my say.
Can we go ahead and maybe ask Paul and a few of the others to contribute a little bit on their views of the current concerns expressed?
Open floor. Anyone that would like to contribute.
All right. Thank you, Lewis. Paul, are you there? Can you shed a little bit of light on our current concerns here? Paul? Are you muted, Paul?
Now, I think I've unmuted myself.
Okay,
there you are.
Look, all comes on.
Okay, thank you. I don't know that I can shed too much light but perhaps I can offer an observation that might be, I hope, helpful. And that would be for us to take a long, hard look at ourselves and determine whether or not our egos or our ids compel us to take strong, separate positions from our other neighbors. And if it does, is there an underlying moral or ethical foundation for us being that way? Now, that's not an easy task for anybody, because first off, it requires not just a little thought, it requires a great deal of thought, and it requires a great deal of introspection. Both of those are, they are without a doubt the hardest two exercises for any human being to engage in. Thought is probably one of the hardest to do. But we could start by asking ourselves, what do I want and what do I need in this lifetime? And I think all of us would agree that we need and want to be absolutely free as we can possibly be, while at the same time understanding that our interpersonal relationships have to be governed by rules of socially acceptable conduct. I think one of the examples that I might be able to come up with to maybe shed a little light on that concept is the heated discussion that took place before the last meeting, at the meeting before the last one. And what I was hearing, well, hold on. I better get some permission to speak upon this. Lewis, may I use you as an example, please? Hello?
Lewis, are you muted?
Well, okay, I'll try to.
Yes, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, certainly you can use, and I appreciate that permission. And had I been on the call during the call last time, I don't believe that I would have had these same questions regarding a possible defamation of character and slander. So I appreciate you asking permission, Paul, and you have it. Granted. I yield the floor.
Thank you very much. There was considerable discourse about evidence, and if I recall correctly, the point of consternation seemed to have revolved around the question of, is there evidence of misfeasance or malfeasance surrounding the presidential election cycle? And as I recall, there was one, maybe two individuals who were very adamant that there was evidence. And Lewis was taking the position, if I recall correctly, that he had not yet seen any evidence. And Lewis used one example that I do recall, and that was that some woman was testifying to some facts that she had been a witness to. And Lewis's comment was that he wouldn't believe her on a stack of Bibles, number one, or some words to that effect, and even if he had an opportunity, he would consider prosecuting her. Well, let me share with y'all this one thing. Based upon my prior experiences in law enforcement and as a judge, there is one fact that is absolutely inescapable, and that is that two people can listen to the same comments by another individual and walk away with two separate conclusions. And both of them, for each of those, is a valid conclusion. Now, I will grant you that there's no way, since the rest of us were not present, there's no way we can judge. We have no basis for making a judgment. But Lewis heard that woman speak, and he walked away with what was for him a perfectly valid conclusion about her truthfulness. But others who may have heard, and I think I did hear one individual say that, well, he heard it and he believed it, or some words to that effect. But what we have to understand is both of those conceptions of what they heard were perfectly valid for each of them. And we must accord each the deference to their conclusion. And apparently, from what I was hearing, Lewis was not being accorded the deference to which he was due.
That's right.
I mean, I may be misspeaking here, but that is my conception. And if we are going to get along,
I respect somebody else's opinion,
then we're going to have to understand that our neighbor doesn't see the same thing the same way we see that incident. And we've got to be prepared to make an allowance for that. Thank God we have still, I don't know how much longer it's going to stay, but we still have a jury trial available to us. And those jurors, when they take their seat, we've got to understand they're not all going to see the same piece of evidence in the same light. They're not going to hear the words of a witness with the same understanding that the neighbor sitting next to them is going to hear it. But when that jury returns a verdict, that is the end of the matter, as far as I'm concerned. The jury has the last word, unless there's, some proof that there's some other shenanigans going on toward the jury. That's the end of the litigation, as far as I'm concerned. So I would hope that we all try to understand our neighbor. And now here is one place where I don't have an answer, and that is when there is a disagreement about evidence between neighbors. If one neighbor does not have sufficient control of his emotions to keep his emotions subdued, then how do we handle that? Well, there are various ways, but one of the ways that we don't need to go is to allow our egos to get in the way. I mean, you know, somebody can call me a thief, or that I'm a criminal, or maybe my neighbor is a criminal, and that can hurt when I know better. But I have to keep my ego under control and try to stay as rational as I possibly can. Now, in staying rational and as being as logical as possible, we all need to understand the admonition of General Washington in his farewell address, when he admonished the American people, don't become embroiled in political affairs. And there is a very excellent reason for that. Because we have to understand within ourselves that we have a tendency to be lazy. That is, we're willing to take somebody's word that something is fact. That's why I always use the disclaimer, not to believe anything I say or write unless it is consistent with something that is true in your life or you are willing to research for yourself. So, in a way, I kind of hate that there is now a division in this organization, but I can understand the necessity of it for a time. And because there is a division, now it becomes probably a good idea to direct each side to do a critical analysis of what you want and what you need in this social structure. And if you can reach a decision that what I want and what I need is to be free and to have my freedom guaranteed, and if not guaranteed, then at least supported when I raise a claim that my freedom is being denied. We have to understand this planet is nothing more or less than a spaceship, and for whatever reason, we're all here on it. Now, we can strive for peace and dignity, or we can allow ourselves to degenerate, and we have to understand that there are people on both sides who are born into this existence incapable, totally incapable of ever being able to conceptualize peaceful relations with neighbors. That's the reason why we have law enforcement agencies in the first place. Because, quite simply, we have some neighbors who just do not, absolutely will not, comport their conduct to a socially acceptable norm. They can't do it. They are mentally prohibited from doing it. So we have to exercise the police authority or the law enforcement authority to contain them when they misbehave. So rather than allowing ourselves to be divided, perhaps we need to pay less attention to Democrats and Republicans, both. As a matter of fact, I am neither. I do not classify myself as a party member of any party. The reason I do that is because I think that I am quite capable of taking a set of facts, observing them, critically analyzing them, and reaching my own decision. I don't need politicians of any party telling me what I am supposed to believe.
Right.
And I don't think any of you do. So anyway, I've run on at the mouth here too long. Let me just say this, that I think it would be useful in the short term, considering the objective of this organization, for this group to initially be divided, but with the objective of aiding and assisting in introspection of each of the members of each of the groups, with the hope of eventual reunification back to the objectives that Mr. Stewart is trying to help us reach. And I thank you, and I'll shut up.
Thank you, Paul. Lewis, do you have any response there?
Just one I've just put on the screen. That was the testimony that I listened to. That was Melissa Caroni testifying in front of the Michigan. I think that was the Senate that she was testifying in front of, and I was trying to figure out actually was she under the influence of something. And I looked at her entire and some other witnesses as well. I think I looked at hours of testimony there. So that's just her on screen. I'd like to ask Paul one question, and then after he responds, I think Cliff mentioned that he wanted to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
So, Paul, you mentioned sometimes controlling one's emotions, or id, and if someone goes on to say that you're a thief or this, that, or the other. With today's technology, were I to publish something, and in the past it was a little bit harder to do something, but right now someone can actually go online and make a public statement which may reach, we don't know who it might reach. You know, it may reach one, or it may go viral. So if I were to say, well, you know what, Paul, and I'm going to use some quotes that how I was described. You know, he's full of shit. He's not honest. He's inflammatory. He's insightful. Now, obviously, these are defamatory statements. Would you not, at the very least, ask me to cease and desist with those type of statements publicly? And if I had that concern or that feeling towards you, come to you directly and explain why one might make those statements? How would you handle that situation? I yield.
Well, of course, if it were if the discussion were between you and I, yes, I would ask you, show me the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you would, I'm quite certain, be more than willing to lay out whatever you had. Then we could engage in a conversation about the weight, relevancy, and sufficiency of the evidence. And your evidence might just persuade me. Or I might.
But if I were online and with a discussion of 2, 3, 4 other people, and I publish this on a platform such as YouTube, so now it goes beyond simply you and I.
Yes.
How do you handle that scenario?
Well, I would probably ignore it. And here's the reason why. That individual, and let's just say that they were saying something derogatory about me, and let me just say, I'll use the examples you used that were used against you can be used against me. And I would probably let it go because it was not doing me any provable harm. Now, if it did me provable harm, and if I did find that based on that individual's comment, I started receiving emails telling me from other people, I started receiving emails or comments online that I was, in fact, duplicitous, that I was a liar, that I was a thief. Now that has done me some harm, and then it becomes actionable in law. It becomes actionable in equity, but it's most all of the equity is now in statutory law. So then I would have a right to seek a redress. Otherwise, as long as it's not doing me any harm, I tend to ignore it.
Thank you for your response.
That's the way that I would deal, or I would require my ego to deal with detractors, whether they're online or whether they're in person.
Thank you for your response.
I'm sorry, I'll yield.
Cliff, you've got the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, this is for Charles. Charles, I think, because I heard the video as well, and I think it may behoove you, because you are in charge and they have great respect for you, and so do I. I think they need to, when a person gets out of line like that, they may just be told that, look, you need to go watch that movie, Changing Places, okay, and then come back next week, and if you got the same attitude, I'm going to have to live with it. But Changing Places gave people an opportunity to see, we value things based on money or assets or how much you got versus how much I got or what you think I have. And that movie would seem to bring the reality back to the forefront. And I yield.
Charles, if I may.
I had my mute on. Yeah, thank you, Cliff. Paul, go ahead.
In getting back to, and I don't think I probably made myself very clear when I was discussing what happened to Lewis. But it's important for everybody to understand. Lewis was watching the lady's testimony, and he was, number one, hearing her words. Secondly, he was assessing her tonal inflections in her speech. 3, he was assessing her body language while she was speaking. So, as a juror, if I may make the analogy, he was sitting there as a juror assessing the weight, relevancy, and sufficiency of evidence. And he should not be challenged on his assessment. I may have watched it, the same thing, and when he gave his assessment, harsh though it was, I would have, if I disagreed with him, the strongest language that I could have used was to say, well, Lewis, I don't agree with you. I don't see it in the same light you do. And then shut my mouth.
Yeah.
Can I jump in a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll hush. I'll yield.
Well, we're good, Paul. Thank you for drawing out issues of joinder. In due process, there's a point where issues become joined between the plaintiff and the defendant, and it frequently multiple points of joinder of issue can be on the table. But you're raising a good one here, Paul, with regard to the lady that Lewis pulled up the clip of there. The bottom line there, to me, is, well, there's numerous issues. The clip there was about the vote fraud thing, and we've gotten over into a different issue of joinder, of the racism issue. On the racism issue, what prompted me from your words, Paul, is the difference between being subjective and objective, the way you summarized Lewis's ideas, and you were speaking generally, too, about people have the right to so-called say their truth. Well, that's their subjective truth that is their belief, and we all have the right to our own beliefs. But if we're going to save the country, and the object of these conferences is to attempt to build consensus in a mutually respectful manner on what is objective truth, while each of us have our own subjective truth, and we respect that, and we can agree to disagree, slowly but surely, we ought to be trying to make progress towards objective truth, like a God of benevolence, whether or not it's a black God or a white God or what kind of a God it is. It's just a God of objective truth and justice. And in my mind, what Lewis is referring to as racism, and is fixated on those terms, it seems, all of those terms that are legitimate in my eyes, and there's a lot of it, but it would all be much better phrased as just issues of injustice towards black people or other people of ethnic minority races here in the USA. It would be much better to refer to it as justice targeting specific races, because that if bad white people are willing to beat up on innocent black people, then they're willing. They have lack of moral character, and those people need to be throttled back because they're perpetrating injustice, and they need to be dumped on hard because they're perpetrating injustice. To my mind, the use of the words, especially in mixed racial company, where we're all trying to come together here as different races, to hammer away on how white people are frequently beating up on black people as a racism thing. To my mind, that's subjective in favor of the minority races. We ought to be phrasing the indictment, the criminal complaint against the abusive white people that are doing these things, as criminal complaints against white people or black people or whoever, Chinese people, whoever it might be. It ought to be they're perpetrating injustice. They're abusing the rights of other people. And when we keep it in that objective terminology, just under the larger umbrella of justice, then we can go to town. Then we can all unite. And if it's white people beating up on black people in unjustified manners, it's not a legitimate citizen's arrest or anything. It's just being an asshole racist. Then those white people need to be coming down on hard. And I'll be glad to join with my black and other minority race brothers anytime any white man is abusing the natural rights of any of the minority races. So I would like to emphasize that. I think we got some background noise there. These folks try to mute if you're not talking. I should probably release the floor there. If Lewis would like to respond to my words or anything else here, or I'll just yield. The floor is open. By you.
I think I heard Gloria that wanted to speak, but very quickly, Charles, I will say this. I never, ever threw a blanket, okay, in terms of the phrase racist on everyone, ever, that you've known me. I was very specific regarding that call and identifying the people that I was discussing. So you've never, ever heard me say, all the way. That's not even my character at all. I can just point out instance after instance after instance after instance, as many as needed. So when I hear someone on a call, especially when I'm not on that call, and I'm being discussed, and their phrases such as, what is this white privilege bullcrap, there is no white privilege, these type of things, then there needs to be some education of those people that are making those type of statements. I am very hard on police.
May I interject here for a moment?
Not as of yet. I have not yielded the floor.
Because you called
I've not yielded the floor. I've not yielded the floor. There are specific, perhaps, police agencies that I have said were simply racist, but never a group of people other than something like the law enforcement. Rural Colorado would be one.
I was
some
told
others
I was by you because I voted for
that I can. Okay, I'm going to need to mute that person that is speaking out of turn, which I've not yielded the floor.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about here. So when someone says, like I said again, what is white privilege? I say you're online, Google it, look it up. For one to deny something like that, that is one that we are not going in the same direction, Charles. That's the only thing that I'm saying. Prior to this, when have you and I had a conflict on the call regarding the content? We've not. I mean, we may disagree on something, but that's not that happens. That's what's going to happen in conversation. And I can appreciate that. So I just wanted to, because I was hearing that, Lewis using the racism thing or throwing it out or trying to paint all as racist when everyone needs to come down on those that are administering not justice, injustice. Okay, then that's exactly what we need to do. And those are the people that I said before. I'm looking for those people to build consensus and to move forward. But those others that identify themselves as being outright racist, in my opinion, based upon things that I'll make that presentment if need be, but those are the ones that I have no time for because they are completely counterproductive. So I think that was Gloria that wanted to speak, and then I will also unmute if she's still here, Cynthia.
Yes.
Gloria, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Charles and Paul. Paul, I appreciate your diplomacy. I guess that comes with being a judge and everything in your words and trying to explain this situation that we've gotten ourselves into. And I'm probably not at all that diplomatic in my presentation and all. And Charles, to your point of what this union, this conference is going to be, or what your objectives are, that we come together and accomplish something that hasn't been accomplished in this country for over 466 years. I mean, I applaud that, but you don't accomplish things, you don't accomplish unity by pretending or suggesting that because maybe you're not aware of another group's history and trials and tribulations, that it has no particular importance. That's what I felt, because I too listened to the video, and that's what I felt your comments were based on. I as a black person, I'm not going to be ignored about what has happened to me in this country being black. That's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to get us to where we need to go. That's not going to render maybe some kind of healing process for white folks who engage in this kind of activity. It's not going to work. What's going to work is that we be able to sit down and, as Paul has recommended, you do some soul searching and everything. There, I felt the dislike and the hatred in the comments that were made. Now, you can't go to your law books and find an amendment or a subject that speaks to that. I got that. But you don't bring people together ignoring their history and who they are either. And, and there's a lot of talk about that. Law has its place. I understand what's going on here. But I don't understand groups of people who want to ignore other people because of whatever their issues are. And I find that a lot of that goes on here. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with left-wingers and right-wingers. What in the hell does that mean? I like Paul, I don't sit on either side of those. I'm an independent who's looking for someone who has the courage to do the right thing and to be truthful and to look at all humanity. That's why I came to this group too. I look for solutions, but solutions don't stand in ground that's based on, let me just ignore these questions and these issues of race I'm going to act like it's just not here. It's not important. Let me look at the law book and it says this, this, this. We don't get there, Charles. Not dealing with the truth. We don't get there ignoring the true words that sit in that Bible that you talk about. We don't get there ignoring that kind of stuff. We get there by having a conversation, not by degrading other people. And I yield.
Right. Thank you. Can I reply to that? In I think a couple of conferences ago, Cynthia, Michael's partner, she used the phrase that I think she claimed to be colorblind. And Lewis voiced an objection to that in saying that, well, that sounds like, as I recall anyway, please correct me if I err, Lewis, but Lewis indicated that means that Cynthia can't see Lewis because Lewis is a colored man, a black man. And at that point, and see, that brings us back to the issue of racism, rather than the broader issue that I prefer to focus on of justice for everybody. And see, this is why and I don't really like the idea of being blinded, and I do see some merit to what Lewis is saying there, but the principle that is attempted to be illustrated with that lady with the scales of justice and the blindfold on, that means that she can't see what color people are, but she can see if they're getting beat up on unfairly. And that means it don't matter whether you're a white man or a black man. If you're getting beat up unfairly, that lady that's colorblind, she's supposed to whack the person with her sword that is beating up on the other person unfairly. And if it happens to be a black man that's getting beat up on unfairly, then that lady of justice that's colorblind, she's beating up on the white guy that's beating up on the black man unfairly. And the same rules apply for everybody. She's going to beat up on black men if they're beating up on white people unfairly. I think that's a legitimate point. I'll yield there, Lewis or anybody.
Yes, I'd like Lewis here. I'd like to comment on that. Again, in an ideal world, as Vincent made a statement earlier. I said, in an ideal world, that would be, that would be the pinnacle. But that's not the case. We know, as I've mentioned, that in terms of people of color dealing with the justice system, it often becomes the injustice system. I can show you instances as recently as the insurrection at the Capitol on January the 6th, where all of these other insurrectionists were allowed to go home before they were actually arrested, escorted down the stairs. There were a few, people of color there, but the darkest complexioned young man that was there, when I saw him taking place in it, my words I said aloud, "You're going to jail." And when he went to jail, he did not get out on his own recognizance. He did not get out on bail. And he didn't damage any property that was shown visibly on the videos. Now, they may have something else, because videos, there's still evidence that continues to come out. But the others were allowed to go home. And even the judges within their home states were allowing these people to go home under their own recognizance or small bails until the federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice actually made a call and said, "What are you doing? Keep him in jail," including Zip Tie Man, the man that sat in Pelosi's office with his feet on the desk and everything else. But you got one man black man standing in the middle of it just looking. But he did enter the building. And believe me, he's going to get the book thrown at him. So I hear what you're saying about Lady Justice or Lady Liberty. But the application of that, and we've seen this throughout the history of this country, is not equal. Again, there's a reason that I'm here with this effort. of re-inhabiting and reimagining and reforming or reconstructing the republic to be all-inclusive. There is a reason that I'm involved in that effort. It is not just because I'm not. So I'm not. I would hope that we don't even have this many discussions or these time-consuming discussions regarding the de facto, other than how we, as the republic, are going to interface with that entity. That's what I would like to limit it to. Unfortunately, that has not been the case, especially since this most recent election. There appear to be a lot of people that are still, having some issues and working through that, and I get it. I mean, some side has to go through that every 4 years. Okay, so I get that. But what you're talking about, Charles, is not happening unless we bring it into existence. It does not exist within the de facto. Again, there's a case right now. The Aurora, Colorado police pulled a young black woman and her four of her family members, one as young as 6 years old, and made them get out of their vehicle and lay face first on the pavement, guns drawn. This went on for 2 hours. She's now suing them because Colorado, that de facto state, did make some changes after the murder of George Floyd. Happened in May. By July, they had made some police reform changes. One included eliminating that immunity for police officers, so now they can be held personally responsible for their actions. The car was not stolen, it was theirs. And 2 hours. These children are screaming for their parents. I think they're with an older cousin or something. Aunt. One as young as 6. Again, policing, the justice system, these things are not equal within the de facto. Okay, so yes, I'm looking to control my elective franchise. Yes, I do exercise the right, the one right I think that elective franchise has, of the vote to affect some change within the de facto. But other than that, my efforts are establishing our republic and our self-governing communities, whereas if even in my neighborhood where I'm at, if we get the numbers where we can actually tell the Detroit Police Department, you do not patrol here. We have our people here. You're not even allowed within this 15-block area. Okay? Sure. So no more stop and frisk and foolishness to inflate and arrest people and harass. So that's what I'm working. That's what I'm working towards. So with that, I yield, because that justice, Lady Justice, really, when it comes to applying what you're speaking of in theory, she peeks out from under that blindfold, sir. The judges do. I yield.
May I?
Yes, Emma.
Go
ahead.
Thank you. I joined the call at approximately 5:15, and this discussion was going on, and this sounds to me like repeat and repeat every organization. There are folk that deny that there's racism. I'm colorblind. I don't see this. I don't see that. In 1959, Nikita Khrushchev, Prime Minister of Russia, said, and he addressed the elephant in the room. We refused to do so. But he said, no outside country will have to destroy the U.S. It will be destroyed from within by two things, your drug problem and your racism. And he's telling the truth. It still stands in 2021. And Patrick Moynihan, along with Spiro Agnew, who's vice president under Nixon, they coined the term affirmative action. And the term the term minority was a vogue term to use, and is used in the pejorative, which is disparaging, derogatory, defamatory, meaning less than, not as good as. And there are people who say justice is blind. You're right. Justice is blind to reality and the truth. Hank Aaron, and I'll say this and use it as the last example, I'll put it that way. He was known as Hammering Hank from the time he entered the baseball field. He broke Babe Ruth's home run record just for doing his job as a ball player. He received so many threats to his life until the FBI had to step in. and the owners of the team had to provide 24-hour protection for over a year and a half because this man was doing his job. Yet justice is blind. Other stellar records were broken in baseball by people that were not melanated. I hate the term, not despise. I hate the term people of color because shucks, you all just go stand in the corner. You'll be all right. I don't think so. Other ball players have broken many records. Not one of them had to have the FBI and security round the clock for over a year and a half. The elephant in the room needs to be addressed because if you don't address it, it's just going to continue eating as a hateful crime, as hatred, and getting fatter and fatter, ingesting hatred, pretending not to see. I yield.
Thank you, Emma. I would like to broaden out the discussion a little bit more, but I would also like to respond. I'm kind of torn in different directions. You've made some good points, Emma. I do have some gut-level responses, but I would like to accommodate some of the other people. We've got a lot of talent here, and Gary Bergman is a very powerful activist that has not talked much here yet. I'd like to rather draw him out. This is probably a focal area of discussion that he wasn't expecting, but Gary, would you like to share any insights or comments on how the discussion has gone so far?
Well, all I can say is we're all children of God, and we're striving to restore our independent state republics and restore the Articles of Confederation. And right now, I think you guys really got off the subject. Even I know you must have had some inner strife, but that needs to be squashed, and we all need to work for the better goodness. So,
thank you, Gary.
And the Union States Assembly does follow the original Articles of Confederation. I suggest you people look at their site and see what they have. They have over 20,000 pages of documentation. But I don't know. According to what I've been told, we're going to split up. This country was split up 4 different ways. And my mission is to restore one of the many kingdoms of God. And I'm working towards it by doing the Nevada Republic.
All right. Yeah, I kind of thought that there were other groups that were supporting the Articles of Confederation besides just the Republic with a K, the Jim Wright Beacon 37 group.
Yeah, and Union States Assembly's been around for quite a while, I would say, and they're always looking for more people to get involved because, like they say, it's the original states when they of the 13 that didn't break away with that when the meetings were hijacked by non-delegates and they formed another municipal corporation or constitution, and that's when everything went down tubes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't take it back that far because I think it's harder for people to grasp. I kind of emphasize what happened during the Civil War and what happened on March 27th, 1861 in General Order 100 and what has happened since then to try to get people interested. Like one of the first things I try to do is show people how about doing looking up their their bond. Trying to open their eyes by watching the YouTube videos that talk about birth certificate bonds. Go to their site, treasurydirect.gov, do a calculation using your birth certificate bond number and your month you was born and the year, and figure out how much money is involved in that, and then tell them that's a global deal. And to get their minds thinking that something's wrong here.
Yeah,
I think we all need. I'm sorry. I think we all need to unregister to vote too. I've done that a few years back. I used to be a head of a independent American party, which is the Constitution Party here in Nye County where I live, but I walked away from that and all politics.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Lewis is big on taking control of the birth certificate bond too. So after years of having the basic data available, time has allowed better ideas to percolate to the top, and so I'm glad to know that, and I agree that that's a good thing to do. At least so long as we don't have our common law rights being respected, it's a good intermediary step.
Like I emphasize, here in Nevada, the Nevada Territory, it's not a state, it's a territory, under their territorial constitution, NRS 1.030 says, like most states, the common law of England is the laws of the land as long as that's not repugnant to the constitutions. Well, everything's based on common law, even our constitution, so I don't think it's going to be repugnant.
Yeah.
And the book that got me interested in it was by John Berger. He used to sit next to me on a bus when we used to drive to San Onofre Nuclear Powerhouse when I was building that. I'm a retired steam fitter pipe welder. But it was a book called None Dare Call It a Conspiracy, written by Gary Allen. And that was the book that got me back in '77 into this movement, seeing what was going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and then knowing about the Trilateral Commission was the thing that got me going.
Mm-hmm.
If I may respond to Gary.
Yes, go ahead.
Very briefly, I am familiar with the Union States Assembly. I was familiar when they first kind of got together back in 2013 and did participate on a few of their calls. At the time, there was a group here in Michigan that was coming off of the 2010-2011 association with the Tim Turner Republic, for lack of a better term, and stepped away individually as a nation state. And around that time, about 2013, there were a number of groups scrambling to be first with their publications and their national and international notices to The Hague and to others. So unfortunately, now they may have changed now. I haven't participated in the call since 2013. But at that time, the same things that we're dealing with right now in terms of ethnicity, falsely labeled race, they were dealing with right then. And there were some extreme people on a couple of those calls, which led me then to obviously disassociate myself and say, this isn't the group for me, and seek elsewhere. Hopefully that has changed. I remember the states, Virginia, a man who claimed to be the great-great-grandson of James Madison. There were, I remember several of the people, that were involved at that time. So just as you're not new to this effort, nor am I. And I've taken a look at several groups.
I've been talking with the Union States Assembly off and on over the last couple of years, and I talked to Dean Merritt a lot. He's out of that group. But the conferences I've been involved in, there has been nothing racist involved, because I'm one of the first that would leave it, because I'm a Native American European heritage, and I've been, in my lifetime of 68 years, only discriminated against a couple times. One was in the state of Maryland. So, and then a couple times.
Hopefully they changed it. And right now, I would say this, Gary, there's also a union call going on biweekly on Wednesdays, which is doing just that, attempting to bring these groups together. So and we're really going to only be able to bring those that are, like-minded people on that call that will, get away from this, the right wing or left wing, but be all inclusive, and let's work towards the same goal. Then we can make progress.
Yeah. I see a lot of things happening in this movement, like what happened, you might say, during the tax time of the 70s and 80s. And everybody was shooting for that almighty dollar, or to say they were the ones, the top guy. And I belonged to one group. We never really got it going, but the purpose of it was called the Committee of 10 Million. It was trying to get everybody to bury the hatchet and work for a common cause. But that didn't work neither. It was trying to bring everybody together, but you couldn't get people to, kind of like churches, especially in this born again movement. I see the same thing there too. And what's going on? Everybody fighting for that Federal Reserve note, which is worthless. But that's just my thoughts on that. And unless anybody else got any questions, or to me, I yield.
As do I. I yield, Charles.
Thank you both. Comments? Anybody?
Just Chris might add a little to the conversation if you'll tolerate it.
Chris, yes, please.
Well, before Gary started talking, and Lewis and the other pleasant lady was speaking about justice and the illusion that she's blind, instead of peeking into the mask to favor her confidants on her court team, whether they're posing as the prosecutor or the defender, they're all on the same bar team. This is an unfortunate fact that evades many people's vision, that if you read their bar agreements, and particularly Corpus Juris Condom, the second body of law, number 7, attorney-client relations, and look in their attorney fees in there, and you'll find that attorneys are all oath, 1 to the bar, 2 as officers of the court, and 3 not to their mere money-paying clients. And therein lies the conundrum that we all are unfortuitously forced to face, whether we like it or not. It's a private association for those that are in that group only, to the exclusion of all others, and I assure you they will war with you with a vengeance if you try to go in there without an attorney. I can speak from experience. They've tried to murder me twice with egregious abuses of mass deadly force for my advocating and being an activist for fair and neutral justice for law for all, and that all lives matter, that we are supposed to be equal under the law and the Creator's plan, and there shouldn't be any bias based upon color, political association, spiritual or religious beliefs, although that kind of conflicts with the concept that resistance to evil is obedience to God. And when it's a pure evil, as we're seeing operative in the world these days, people in high positions of power are hurling word bombs to endanger the lives of innocent people who are really just people that love this country, whether they're black, brown, white, or Asian, or another vernacular. And this is a very, very dangerous time when we let the enemies that consider themselves to be the chosen of a special group, that think the rest of us are supposed to be subservient and ruled over by them, when they're making the rules that are different rules for them versus the rest of us, it creates a dichotomy of judgment in the world that makes it dangerous to be anywhere other than the self-deemed elite group that wants to make the rules for the rest of us. And that's what I'm opposed to, is tyranny that's being heaped upon the world, not just here in America, although it's very noticeable here in America because we haven't been used to this generally, although some groups have been more exposed to it than others. But having the government attack you, attempt to obliterate you, to destroy your home, steal your home from you, valuables from you, break up your family, I can assure you is not a condition that any of you would want to be in, that I have found myself in. And I haven't responded with violence, although that would be a way that some would prefer to solve it and recommend that we do, but I'm not convinced that we may not have to resort to that in the very near future if things keep going the way they are. But I've sought to try to use the law to solve my problems and seek redress of grievances. Although in a lawless court system where the bar is wielding its sword against the rest of us and trying to exclude, running an unconstitutional monopoly on the justice system as they are, it's a very dangerous concept for those who think that we should be able to present our own interest and follow Adderley versus the state of Florida, Tampa, Florida, in fact, and that we are all supposed to educate and remove ourselves from unbenighted ignorance and be articulate and able to present our own interest without hiring an attorney, one of the black robe priests of Baal, to supposedly present our interests so they can prey upon us because we're unsophisticated, unknowledgeable, and not able to use the law to our own self-interest. And in their game, they don't want us doing that because it becomes dangerous for them and their lucrative income. With that, I will describe some of the word terms they use that are word bombs to endanger the rest of us. These are murderous verbal assaults, very similar to lighting fire and hollering fire or lighting a fire in a theater. When you put the label of a domestic terrorist, a white militia member, a black militia member, a black beret, or any other titles they want to cast on us, even though we really just love America and want our children to be able to live free and not be played upon by pedophiles and court people and so on and so forth. If people are truly a dangerous society, yes, they should be put away and removed. But whenever the word speak has become a weapon of war, and they weaponize the agencies of government against us, and we go to them thinking they're going to protect us, and all they're going to do is abuse us or wipe us off the face of the planet, kick our butt and take our stuff, it is very, very dangerous. With that, I'll turn back to Charles, and thank you for letting me say my piece.
Thank you, Chris. Comments or questions from anybody else?
I agree with that statement regarding the bar. I yield.
Thank you, Lewis. There is an issue that I think it was Gloria that drew out some more of the points about racism and justice is blind and things like that we had joined her on, that she was kind of friendly debate with me a little bit on dissenting opinion on some of the views I expressed. I'd like to put a kind of a final wrap on it. There's just one more thing that I'd like to say. Me personally, my history. I grew up in a small town in Alaska, Sitka, where about half the population was Native American, and I hated school. And most of the Native Americans hated school also. And so in the dummy class, 8th grade, 13 years old, room 8D, that's right next to F, there's A, B, C, D, E. The smart class, they were 8A. The next smart class was 8B, C, D. There was only 4 classes. It was a small school. I was in 8D. With all of the Native Americans. That 8D class was about 80% Native American, but I hated school, and most of the Native Americans were smart enough to hate school also, and so we were all stuck in the dummy class, okay? And so early on, I was happy in a lot of ways with those Native Americans. Tlinkits and Haida is the particular tribes in Southeast America. I know what I'm talking about. Those Native Americans, they knew that school system was a slave camp. It was a mind manipulation camp. All of the white people that I got to pal around with once in a while out in the playground and stuff, during break times, physical education and things, they were stupid. It was the Native Americans that were up to speed on how all of this is just a big evil empire dominance and control operation, and to shift from my own schooling and since young age backgrounds about all these things. My father was a working class man. His father was a working class white man, and his father before him was a working class white man. And I didn't know them, but from what history I can glean, they were against the slave trading evil empire also. We've hated the evil slave trading masters for generations upon generations upon generations. It's in my DNA code. I hate the slave traders. And there were a lot of white slaves in early America also. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how my Stewart family came over here, was slaves. I don't know. But they're under. Anytime any black person jumps up and starts complaining about racism, I'm going, I'm with you. Let's do something about these slave trading bastards that are causing your racial oppression, because they're oppressing us white working class people also just as much. Let's talk about how we're going to take them down. Talk about how we're going to take their privilege and power away from them. Can we talk about that? Something constructive instead of just talking about your specific issue on racism? Because if we're going to work together, it's got to be about more than racism. It has to be about changing the evil empire system so this racism is no longer a problem. And when we talk about dismantling the evil empire slave trading jurisdiction, then we've got common ground. When we're just talking about oppression of black people, well, I'm sympathetic to you, but that's not a common ground that me and my ancestors are enthused about. But if we can reword it so that it's about dismantling the oppressive evil empire, and go ahead and definitely include that as part of what we're looking for in the larger agenda for justice for all, then we can all work together. But as long as we can't put the blindfold on, justice is blind, I don't think it's evil empire municipal blind. I think the principle of the justice is blind, and things like that is legitimate. And anyway, that's kind of a quick and dirty summary of where my heart is really at with regard to this issue. I do hope to be working with good people of all races. And believe me, please, I got serious, nasty problems with a lot of white people. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are at the top of my list. They're both white people, and I despise both of those people. So I do hope to bring all people together in righteous indignation against the slave traders that are destroying the rights of all people of all races and belief systems. So it felt good to get that off my chest, and that might be some new light for Lewis or any of the other people that are supporting him. If any of y'all would like to respond, are you?
This is Lewis. I'd like to respond. First, I'd like to, Gloria, I thank you for your comment as well. I was in complete agreement. However, I just had, when I came on, I addressed a different issue. But I think that everything that you said was, in fact, on point. Thank you, Charles, for sharing your personal experiences there, and I'm in agreement. And I will also say this, that the power brokers, the money manipulators, the true power structure, they recognize from the union of the working classes and the people getting together, they recognize that as their major threat. As such, they begin to offer little caveats for the working class whites to separate themselves from everyone else. So they recognize that the union of the people was a threat to their power structure, and they then look to divide. And they've been very effective for how many years now? Hundreds of years now. So we've got the ability to correct that. But as Gloria mentioned, the conversation must take place. So although, we've taken an hour and 45 minutes of something that we're still on 2B or 2A, this was necessary, in my opinion, to clear the air where everyone knows where everyone stands on this call. And if you are of like mind and believe that, the dismantling that the power structure and the inequality, specifically, which starts with ethnicity, called, again, inappropriately racism, but really is an economic issue. Okay, it's all about a dollar on this country. That's been the case from day one. And they make decisions based upon, economics. So if we're, again, we know people that are of like mind and would like to see a community and society that is inclusive of all and a just society, then this is the call for those people to participate on. This call, the Wednesday union call, these are the calls that look to bring the people together that are actually moving in one direction. If you are one that says that there is no white privilege and what is this white privilege bullcrap, this is not the call for you. And that needs to be very clear as well. So, again, with that, I would yield. I think this call was very necessary. And thank you for taking the time to have this. And again, it's 6:45 at this point, so obviously we're not going to make it through this agenda that you had for today, at least during the recorded business section, the business section of the call. The call will continue to be recorded, but just the 7 o'clock period. Perhaps we can pick this up again the 2 weeks from tonight and move forward. With that, I yield.
Michael in Florida would like the floor for a moment.
Lewis, are you inclined to allow Michael to have the floor here?
Everyone has an opportunity to speak.
Michael, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm troubled that was even questioned. Very interesting. Well, anyways, I think the sooner we understand that we are all slaves, and not any one of us is a greater slave than any other person. We are all slaves in this country together. And the sooner we understand that, the better we will be unified. It's just that simple. Not any one of us, whether it's a group or a person, is any greater slave than any other. Let's all get that through our head, and we will be much better off. I yield.
If I might, Charles, I'd like to respond to that.
Yes.
Economically, I agree completely with what Michael has said. In terms of life expectancy, in terms of medical, not just the insurance aspect, but actually there are studies that have been done that there are X number of black people that die every year for no other reason than by being black and not attended to by a black doctor, babies as well as adults. So in terms of human rights, I do not agree with that statement. In terms of the civil rights and the economic position, the 14th certificated United States citizen is a slave, period. That's by definition when you look it up. So we're in agreement on one hand. On the other hand, I tell you that the odds of one looking like me being shot and killed, for example, by a member of a police agency are greatly increased versus Michael being shot and killed. So therefore, that's not equal. And I cannot pretend that is equal. And someone that pretends that is equal is being delusional. So that's where we defer. I yield.
Charles, this is Vincent.
Vincent.
Yes, and I have one little comment to say. The denial of factual American history where black people were captured and brought here against their will to become servants cannot be denied. There's no other group of people that can claim that fact. I yield.
Well taken, Vincent. No doubt, the black people do have special burdens that they're carrying. And I don't think Michael was seriously contesting that point, but I think Michael's underlying point that the evil empire is oppressing us all, white people and black people alike, and that especially at the working class level, at the lower classes, I like to view our problem as class warfare, not as racial conflict, but as class warfare. And unfortunately, well, either way, there are more poor black people percentage-wise than there are white people. Some white people have been privileged to be slave masters. Very few black people have been privileged to be slave masters. I don't think the solution is to allow more black people to be slave masters. I think we need to abolish the institution of slavery, and that's multicultural. It's not just a problem of the black people. It's a problem of all races.
Agreed there.
And I don't mean to raise my voice on emphasizing pulling away from legitimate concerns about the greater levels of oppression that black people suffer. I recognize that. I admit it. And white people that don't admit it, I think, are delusional, and I'll be glad to join forces with my black and other minority friends in condemning those white people for being narrow-minded and perhaps even bigoted. But we need to get past that, like Paul and Gary and Cliff and the others have been saying to us. We need to be united at the grassroots level, where we all just want to be treated fair as commoners. That's a term used in Anglo-American common law tradition, England. They refer to common people as commoners. That's working class people. I think that's where we need to be, and nobody gets to be in a position of governmental authority over any of us unless he's basically an equal and he's a servant. That's what the whole concept of public servants and public service is supposed to be about. Everybody is at the top of the pyramid, and anybody else that's in a position of authority, they have to operate under the rule of law to be there in service to the larger organic body politic, the public.
But my thing is, you got to understand, black people are not the authors of the law. We're subjects of the law. We are not jury, judge, or executioner of the law. So basically, when we sit down here, and the whole thing is, we want equity with the law. And that's the biggest problem. And I wonder what's wrong with wanting to be equal. I yield.
There's nothing wrong. Go ahead, Louis.
No, that wasn't me.
Who? Somebody else?
It's Paul Nally.
Oh, please.
Benson, I am going to speak directly to you. And I want you to pay very careful attention. And then I want you to take my words and comply with my disclaimer that you are not to believe anything I say or write unless it is consistent with something you already know to be true, or you are willing to research for yourself. When you turned the age of 18, and I'm assuming you're over 18, you took a seat at the board of directors of two of the largest corporations in the world, the United States of America and your state, whatever state you're in. Now, you are going to have to understand that, because in that position, from the time you turned 18 until today, you have done your part in making laws. The Supreme Court of the United States has said on several occasions that you are the sovereign. The people of this nation are true. They use the phrase true sovereigns. Now, you can accept your legal standing as a sovereign and a sitting member of the board of directors, or you can feel sorry for yourself and perceive yourself as a subject, a servant. But it is your decision which way you go. But I am at the age of 75, I am telling you, and I want you to check this out for yourself. You are a sovereign citizen as declared by the Supreme Court of the United States, and you are a sitting board member of two of the largest corporations in the world. Young man, I am challenging you to conduct yourself both as a sovereign and as a sitting board member and my contracting partner in these two corporations. And I yield.
And I respect that, Paul. But again, I'm from Detroit, in Michigan, where the people spoke, and we had a law here that actually took the voice of the people away, and we overturned it. And our government in Michigan overturned the will of the people and attached it. It was called the Emergency Managers Law, and attached that to an appropriation bill so we cannot recall it again, overturn it. So you keep saying about the corporation and sovereign, but that law only affected communities that were black, cities that were black, municipalities that were black, and school systems that were black. So I respect what you're saying, but in practice, it's not honored when it comes to people of melanic color, which is, what I am. I yield.
If I may. Well, Paul, you go ahead and respond if you got to respond to that, and then I'd like to chime in.
That's okay, Lewis. Go ahead.
Okay. Vincent, very good point. Just as you on some other calls brought up something that didn't get touched on this call, the Voter Registration Act that needs to be renewed every 25 years. Again, we have a special category or classification. What they like to, in law, they like to say a species, okay, of citizen like no other. Now, what you and Paul just said are both correct. I believe that at 18, that seat as a shareholder on those corporations was there for the taking once one announced it and took whatever steps they needed to take control of that elective franchise. Most don't do it. As such, I feel that it then becomes abandoned property. And because the United States certificated person is, and they put this in USC 1, Section 8, definition of words and terms, it's an infant, no older than 3 years of age, depending upon the source. So it's either 0 to 2 or 0 to 3. That's what the United States certificated person is. It's an infant until one takes control of that entity. Okay, and that I don't want to get into what steps one might do because there are different ways to do that. But I'm sure some others on this call, know about that. And as the status of a U.S. certificated person, the vote of the child or the infant can always be overridden by the parent. And if the state is the parent, they can override that at any time. And that's one of the things my mother, through the years, my mother and I have even had some type of discussions and debates regarding the effectiveness of either, a protest or whatever the case might be. Often I believe that it's similar to a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum in the middle of the mall where the parent is saying, look, get up, stop acting this way. But once, which we're doing, okay, on some of our calls, and we'll talk again tomorrow morning as taking steps to correct the status so we can once again address that issue of the emergency manager statutes, but not from the position of United States certificated person, but from the position of shareholder to the corporations, which Paul has identified. Many within our assembly have heard me say, you might be in your correct status. But that's not something that we're going to argue with a police officer, a policy officer, on the shoulder of 96 during a traffic stop, because we don't want to get accidentally shot 24, 25 times. See, which we know happens. It's an accident. I thought he had a gun. I thought he was, a threat. We had to shoot him 20, 30 times. He was still moving. Well, you're still pumping bullets into the body, so it might jump. So I've asked all not to have those conversations once we engage with the policy officer, 10 o'clock on the side of the road.
That's plenty more.
We can't do it. However, let's survive the encounter, and the very next morning, let's go to work in terms of the either jury trial on the common law side and even on the de facto side, exercising and prosecuting to the fullest extent of the law. And if the law is not in place, let's put it in place, just as they did in Colorado. Within 2 months, within 60 days, they had stripped the police of their immunity and put other laws in place for the people to sue them and hold them accountable, for their injustices. And if they did it in Colorado within 60 days, we can do it here.
Yeah, amen.
I yield.
Thank you, Lewis. Other comments, questions, anybody? I think we're getting close to our 2-hour mark here for our business meeting, aren't we, Lewis?
Actually, we are. We're at 7:02 right now. So if you can go any type of concluding statement for the business meeting, I've got to go ahead and take my leave of the call. I will listen to the replay and anything that I missed. So I'm brought up to speed for next call. Again, I think although this was not on the agenda, I believe that this call was very needed. And I think that this, now we know where we are. So 2 weeks from today, those that attend this call, we will assume that we're on the same page and we are working in the same direction. Yeah. And we will not have to have this call again, this type of call matter. In terms of content. Yes, I yield.
Excellent, Lewis. Excellent. That's even though it was rather a distraction from our larger issues at fighting the evil empire and getting justice for everybody, it was homework that we needed to accomplish. We needed to have the heart-to-heart discussion here, and I believe, and again, the right-wingers call on Monday evening. I encourage you all to attend there too. What we're doing over here on the Saturday calls may have dissenting views expressed over there on the Monday evening right-wing call, and we'll work at it from there. But at least with regard to this community, we've basically got a pretty good working consensus that we can move forward with and generally put it behind us and focus on the larger issues now. So yes, thank you very much, Lewis, especially you, Lewis. I'm sorry the way that you took the brunt on the Monday evening call there. That was definitely not my intention. I did my best to defend you as well as I could there. But yes, this is the conclusion of our main 2-hour business meeting of our regular Saturday evening conference here. We like to keep both conferences, the Monday evening and the Saturday evening conferences, focused in professional manners on the business issues on our agenda during the first 2 hours. And then thereafter, directly continuing on in the same recording anyway, we like to call a conclusion at the 2-hour mark and then just rather open up for discussion about general issues and hope for further consensus building under more general and less regimental discussion. So at that point, I guess we kind of shut the guts out of my agenda here, and we can return to that if we like. But I'm thinking we've got a real nice group here, and there's probably at least a few things that a lot of people would like to just take the conversation to free flow here. I'm inclined to go in that direction. Would anybody like to take the floor and either continue on with the previous discussion or start something a little bit new here? Anybody? I yield.
I'd like, if I may, I'd like to ask a question of one of the participants, if they're still on here. That would be Susan from Arizona. If she's on here, could she give us a report in regard to the actions being taken on the vote count in Maricopa County between the Senate and the County Board of Supervisors of Maricopa County? I yield.
I don't see Susan in our conference attendees list here, Michael.
Oh, okay. She was on earlier, but she must have dropped off.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess your question's moot if that was all that you were focusing on. Did you have anything else, or does anybody else? Anybody?
Paul and Allie, and I'm going to have to drop off. Good night to everybody.
Good night, Paul.
Good night, Paul.
Yeah. Okay.
This is Vincent too. I have to drop off now. Thank you for a very, I think, very good conversation that needs to be had, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Take care. All right. Well, we're getting down to a good solid little group of core activists. Looks like Chris Cave jumped off too. I see Emma's still with us, and Gary Bergman's still with us. Both of you have not done a whole lot of participating in our past conferences or even this one. Would either of you like to build conversation a little bit further in any particular direction?
Well, if I may,
Gary?
I wasn't involved in the other meeting, so it was just kind of a learning curve.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since I've been on your conferences.
Yeah.
But my main thing, there's still only a couple of us here. I still think until we really get this thing going, that everybody needs to push their state republics into a common law private members association, a non-government agency, kind of like what the corporate agencies did after the Civil War. They ran parallel governments to the constitutional governments till they took control. Well, we could do the same thing through a common law private membership association with its contract membership. And I think, you can form a businesses, you can really take everything over, even businesses, and just tell the corporate agencies where to go because they're no longer having anything to do with them.
Yeah.
So that's my deal. Then once we got control over everything, okay, then you can either keep the association or abolish it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Michael?
Is Nikki on the call from Pennsylvania?
No, she dropped off also, it looks like.
No, I was wanting to know the status of Pennsylvania and concerning the election count.
Yeah. Gary, I'd like to try to I don't know if you've talked with Michael before, but Michael has been involved in, I think it's the same group that you're talking about, the Union States. Is that the group that Destry is largely in leadership position of?
No, that's a different group. Destry's involved in National Assembly.
Okay. Well, who's the lead? Who's Gary referring to then? Anna von Wright's group, or who?
No. Union States Assembly. They're more like an educational deal type of thing, but exposing what exactly what happened, the Articles of Confederation versus the Municipal Constitution, how non-representatives, delegates formed their own government per se, and showing people the steps they need to come back and form a real republic or a confederation of state republics. They're in the proper name under the Articles of Confederation, States of America. United is just a corporate deal.
But to help me and maybe Michael to identify clearly what group you're associated with, can you name a few of the people that are at least figureheads in that group so that we can kind of orientate who you're talking about?
Dean Merritt's the guy I talk to all the time, and the other ones, I haven't been to one of their meetings in a while because they're conflicting with my radio show.
Okay.
What state is Dean in?
He's in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
But they're the original third. I'm sorry?
You have a radio show?
Yeah, you can find us if you got Facebook or YouTube. You can look us up under Nevada Republic Network.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Because we're just local for this 35,000 people community.
Mm-hmm.
So we tell everybody, go to YouTube or Facebook and look up our Facebook page. Plus, on our Facebook page, we show what the flag of the Nevada Republic looks like versus what the corporate Nevada Battleborn flag looks like.
Uh-huh.
So are you working in your local area, in your own county, to gather people to help you, or are you doing all this on the Internet nationally?
We were working with people, people that don't want to sit down and research and want you to do all the work. They never stay together. And then it's basically just a handful of us now. We're trying to work it out on a whole. That's why we went to the YouTube and Facebook on the radio to try to get more people within the state. But it's a really slow process. People are so closed-minded, and they're more interested in their sports.
Yeah.
Getting out riding the dunes and their side-by-sides and stuff like that. And then I go after these corporate churches. I mentioned them a few times, and these state ministers, how they're not churches of God. I said, it's time to get away from these, Walk away from that corporate church and state ministers. You're being programmed. They're not churches of God.
Are you aware of what is the book on Caesar? I forget the gentleman's name. Oh boy. It's about corporate churches.
No, I never read one about corporate churches. No.
Yeah, it's really good. Oh man, I wanted to recommend it, and you would really like it. I'll think of it. If I do, I'll bring it up.
In fact, I got a friend that's a retired, world-renowned doctor that's writing a book, and it's going to tear the religious world apart. In fact, it's a Christian book publishing place that's helping them put the book together. He just destroys it all.
Yeah.
So, like the ancient who are the Jewish people and who aren't the Jewish people and stuff like that, and some other things. He's been playing with this for 2 years now. So when that gets out, I'm going to have him on my show, and we're going to talk about it. But there's supposed to be some real good stuff in that thing.
The book I was thinking of is In the Grip of Caesar. It's all about the 501c3 corporate church. It's really good.
Yeah, well, that's, those corporate churches are in conflict with our Constitution and the common law, the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, but I kind of went away from the Bible, went more to the Native American spiritual world, and because we were here long before the Bible was, and we lived in pretty good harmony. And I have a spiritual advisor, and December 28th, she gave me the word that we're going into civil war in this country, and we'll be in it before summertime. And we're going to split up about four ways. So that's what I'm trying to get the people to wake up. It's time to protect your state republics, or we're going to lose everything.
I don't like that phrase, civil war. I think that concedes that civil government has the right to exist. We need to abolish all forms of civil government and have biblical Torah law, common law government. Yeah.
Well, don't take
go ahead.
I got that stuck in my head. I try to use aggression, like the Northern War of aggression.
That's part of why I raised the issue. If I repeat it often enough, after a while, I'll be able to adjust everybody's vocabulary. I think it's a healthy thing that we all try to watch how we're wording our propositions. Earlier, maybe it was you, Gary, or Chris, talking about possibly resorting to violence to take the power away from these corrupted, jackbooted Nazi government officials. And technically speaking, when jackbooted Nazi government officials are coming against you and you respond with force, that's not violence. Violence, by definition, is a bad thing. You don't want to refer to yourself or your community as ever acting violently, because that's automatically unlawful. We've got the lawful right to resist tyranny and despotism with force. The proper word there is not violence, it's lawful force is a preferable phrase. There's the devil's in the details, man. I'd like to welcome Jim Bleakley. He just joined with us from my old stomping grounds in Oregon here. I yield.
Well, that's why I always say the Gandhi effect. I prefer the Gandhi effect, but you need to have a militia to enforce it sometimes for protection.
And there's another word where the devil's in the details. Militia is a term that has some problematic connotations with it. It's generally referred to state-level jurisdiction, and it has connotations of malice and of municipal form of government from the Roman Empire. The more common law terminology at the next lower grassroots, more legitimate level of the county is the phrase posse comitatus. Under constitutional law, the state militia should be just an assembly of the posse comitatus from each of the counties, if that makes sense. And it would be good to be referring to just be clear to the idiot de factos that we are really invoking common law jurisdiction, higher law authority here. See, that when we use the word militia, that's kind of ambiguous. When we're talking posse comitatus, it's real clear. This is common law jurisdiction staring them in the face. So I really like, and again, choosing our words carefully and strategically can be extremely empowering. And that's a lot of our problem at the grassroots. We got a lot of good-hearted people out here trying to do good stuff, but they don't have the vocabulary or the script to make the bad guys back down and concede.
Well,
so that's why
the
we
books I read
I yield.
on the common law has always said militia.
Pardon me?
When they talked about the armed groups in England, they always said militia.
Well, ever since the Norman conquest of 1066, England has been under Roman Empire civil municipal law. That's because England is now the British Empire. You've heard that. Empires are municipal Roman Empire model of government. Right. See, originally the common law roots with jury trials and everything is in the local communities. That's a grassroots bottom-up process where all government officials, including the king, are accountable to the people. But I dare suggest the larger context in which you're using that English terminology of militia, that's still an erroneous concept, because that type of terminology likely came in after the Norman conquest, where everything was converted from grassroots bottom up to top down authoritarian. If that makes sense.
Well, we picked up a charter from the International Common Law Court of Justice out of Brussels, Belgium, and being that, we can have court-martials.
Yeah, is that what Kevin Annette is running, or who's your guru there?
Yeah, Kevin's deal. Yeah, well, he's one of the heads of it. Yes.
Yeah,
I don't deal with him too much. I deal directly.
He's the only one that'll put his name on the documents, right?
Well, he's one of the guys. Yeah, I deal with Belgium, France, Austria, or Italy on their different courts of the international common law. I kind of stay away from Kevin. He's hooked up on his deal with this his republic up there in Canada. He's too involved in that, so I kind of shy away from that part.
I'm quite convinced that Kevin Annette is a nasty subversive that is working against the best interests of the people.
So I don't think the court is. I just think maybe he is.
Well, he's working with Robert. Isn't he one of the people that's working with Robert David Steele, or am I wrong on that?
I never heard of that name, so I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I might be confused on that. There's all kinds of groups out here that are purposefully, I believe they're purposefully misleading us. I've reached out to most of these groups, and they don't want to listen about how real common law was run in England prior to the Norman conquest of 1066 AD, and how it's all based on biblical law, Exodus 18 model of decentralized self-governing communities. None of them want to talk about that. They just want a newer version of top-down authoritarian government. It's like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. They don't care as long as they get to be at the top of the pig pile. Yeah. Let me try to draw Jim Blakely out. Jim, how are you doing? You got any comments or questions on what we're talking about here?
Well, thank you, Charles. Good afternoon. It's good to hear you again. Sorry I'm so late to the call. Yes, if I may, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the way we understand in this country, at least, the term militia to intend to be an armed body of men assembled to assist the sheriff in protecting the lives, rights, and property of the people in a given county?
I do believe the proper term for assisting sheriffs in counties is posse comitatus. The term militia has traditionally been used in state and national constitutions to refer to state-level armed military organizations of the people, I do believe.
Well, I've seen it used different ways, and it was my understanding that it was that it started at least at the county level.
Well, sure. That's in the natural organic terminology, and that's the way that we can spin it. But when we choose our words and we're confronting the de factos, the oppressors, we need to be choosing our words in optimal strategic manner so that we're pulling the rug out from under them, pulling their color of legitimacy foundation out from under them. We're taking away their color of legitimacy. And if we talk in terms of posse comitatus, that gives them no wiggle room to try to pretend like Roman Empire civil municipal government is still applicable, whereas constitutions that establish civil municipal government, state and nationally, they all talk in terms of militia. So the forked-tongued lawyers and judges thereunder have some color of legitimacy for presuming that by talking about how wonderful the militia is, that you're by implication supporting the continued existence of civil municipal top-down authoritarian model of government.
Okay. Well, the term posse comitatus, that's something I've never. It's a term. It's two words, both of which are Latin rooted, as far as I am aware, and I've never taken any time to do any research on them and break them down and see what each one of them originally meant.
Mm-hmm. If I might, in further support of what I'm talking about, posse comitatus there, if you put quote marks around posse comitatus and put it in a Google or DuckDuckGo or search engine, you'll come up with numerous hits. Wikipedia's got a good article there, but you'll also come directly to what discussion frequently focuses on, the Posse Comitatus Act that was invoked after the Civil War. And it's rather a short document, but it just talks about, it places a limitation on federal military troops, like what's being used with this goofy coronavirus thing. It places a limit on them, and it says, by implication, by the name, and by the wording, that it clearly implies that keeping the peace and enforcement of the laws of the county, that is to be handled by the Posse Comitatus. That's why they call it the Posse Comitatus Act, because although the wording is focusing on obstructing federal troops from coming into the individual counties, but by referring to Posse Comitatus as basically being the foundation where all of those executive functions should be coming from, ideally, that's the clear implication of the Posse Comitatus Act. That is obviously what is intended to be promoted by that act, and that gives us wiggle room, space, to come in here and start organizing Posse Comitatus. And this is part of what Michael and I have been in intense discussion on a lot of these issues, and Michael continually raises to me that, well, we don't have enforcement yet and things. Well, and that's a legitimate complaint, but we need to be focusing our energies on providing that enforcement through organizing our Posse Comitatus, through establishing the peace officers in the townships and precincts along the Exodus 18 model, and thereunder not allowing other issues like the vote fraud and things like that to take our efforts away from building our grassroots communities in a bottom-up manner where we really can confront the de facto military police state that's coming at us. They're in violation of Posse Comitatus Act when they start doing forcible vaccinations through their military troops and stuff like that. And if we've got Posse Comitatus or properly organized in our counties, then it's not going to be just an intellectual feel-good discussion. It's going to be a serious eyeball-to-eyeball discussion with hands on the pistols and the holsters there. And conflict might erupt. Some people might get killed, but hopefully that won't happen. It won't be us that starts the violence. Difference between violence again and lawful use of force. See, the Posse Comitatus Act says that the Posse Comitatus peace officer people under common law jurisdiction have the right to decide who gets to use force in the counties. You federal military people, See the Posse Comitatus Act? You got no jurisdiction here. You take your hands off of your handguns and you escort out of our county now. Now. Get your ass out of our county now. And all 3,000 counties across the USA need to be saying the same thing and pushing them right back to WDC and maybe taking that away from them too. I yield.
Well, you want to know the Black's Dictionary?
Definition of which one? Militia, Posse Comitatus? What are you doing?
Posse Comitatus.
All right, I'm listening, Gary.
Which version of Black's?
This is 6th edition of Black's. The power or force of the county, the entire population of a county above the age of 15, which a sheriff may summon to his assistance in certain cases as to aid him in keeping the peace, in pursuing and arresting felons, etc. And this is William versus State of Arkansas. This court case. That's all they got on it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good definition.
I figured that was easier than trying to fire up my computer.
Yeah.
If I may,
go ahead, Michael.
The operative word in that definition is sheriff.
As long as it's a constitutional sheriff.
Right.
I mean, here in my county, we don't have a constitutional sheriff. I yield.
Yeah. We might want to talk about what is necessary to replace him. I think we've had a conversation before about that, Gary, that if we can get 10 people to in your county to follow your lead, we could probably remove that sheriff from office, I believe. Take it away from him and put somebody else more competent, like maybe you, in there.
If I may, I'd like to ask Gary a question. Gary, how would you define a constitutional sheriff?
Somebody that doesn't put the state statutes in front of the Constitution. She says, well, like she says, I enforce codes and statutes, not constitutional law.
And then
if you go by the Clearfield Doctrine, she receives funding from the United States Corporation, which isn't in gold and silver, which makes her a private corporation, and she is on the Dun and Bradstreet numbers.
That is not a lawful, constitutionally authorized sheriff.
And she has a civil flag, but she won't fly it. She refuses to recognize it now.
She has abdicated her office and authority.
Yeah.
That office is vacant. Just nobody's stepping up to claim that fact.
Well, we got one guy, he just wants, in fact, the owner of the radio station, ex-police, who's now been converted, is willing to take that position, but he just wants to make sure he got all the I's dotted before he steps up.
If I may, I'd like to ask, how would he do that? How would he take that vacant office and put himself in that position? How could that be done?
I think that's Charles' specialty.
I'd love to hear anybody. Charles?
Thank you both for passing the ball over to me here. This is my specialty. I wake up in the middle of the night with Posse Comitatus guys dancing through my mind. A couple of different things. If there might happen to be statutorily or constitutionally recognized office of the county judge in Nevada, that would be an office that could be used also, because actually the office of county judge, as there does exist in Texas and Oregon, the office of county judge. And if that office is occupied, that would give you an alternative, and you could ask the county judge. You could put paperwork. You could put a complaint in front of the county judge to invoke his jurisdiction. And at that point, complain against the sheriff and bring basically quo warranto action would obligate the county judge to adjudicate with the jury whether or not your complaint against the sheriff is sufficient to oust that sheriff from his office and to put somebody else into the office, possibly yourself, to more responsibly preserve the peace, as is obligatory on all sheriffs under their common law jurisdiction. But not without any additional complications from the office of county judge. Basically, from the grassroots bottom up, the larger strategy is to decentralize the power in the manner that's clearly implied from both the biblical Torah law and the Anglo-American common law, in that the county is just an assembly of the precincts, like the precincts are assemblies of townships, and townships are assemblies of households of the qualified electors. And at the higher level, the states are assemblies of the counties, and the federal government is assembly of the states. So the operative phrase there is political subdivisions and constituencies. The constituency of the county is the officers that are the heads of the precincts. They come together to form the county court, the shire court. The word county is from French administrative municipal law, and it's actually less than optimal, the word county. The Anglo-Saxon real common law term there is shire, and the word reeve means the commanding officer. There's town reeves, there's 100 court precinct level reeves, 100 reeves, and there's shire reeves. That just means like captain is worded in the Exodus 18 passages. It talks about captains of tens and fifties and hundreds and thousands. Those would be reeves of tens and fifties and hundreds and thousands. And so you have no county unless you've got an assembly of the precincts. And so if you get 10 people willing to assume the vacant public offices of the 10 precincts into which each county is constitutionally required under common law mandate to be politically subdivided, then you've got the shire court, you've got the county court there, and they decide from their own constituents, from their own assembly of precinct captains, of precinct reeves, who will be the shire reeves. Okay, so Gary, that would be the way I would be suggesting to try to think about taking the problem away from that corrupted female sheriff, is to try to get 10 people. Your county there, I think, is pretty high population. Maybe not.
100,000.
100,000. That's a pretty good sized county. If you could find 10 people, you would be in a rock solid position to take control of the machinery of the government of the county under its true constitutionally lawful common law jurisdiction.
Yeah, we'd have to take everything, because the Justice of the Peace is a retired, well, not retired, but he left the Sheriff's Department and became a Justice of the Peace. So he's just as crooked as the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. That office of Justice of the Peace, that's the office of the leader of the precincts. and he shouldn't have any jurisdiction larger than just his own precincts. Over here in Texas, they got justice of the peace that they referred to county-wide justice of the peace, and they got constables that are county-wide constables. That is pure municipal Roman Empire fiat, smoke and mirrors, that denies the inherent common law jurisdiction nature of constables and justice of the peace judicial officers. So they got no shame the way they're rearranging things here, but here in Texas and in Oregon and at numerous places, I've got eyeball to eyeball with these people. Jim Bleakley here has been with me in a number of occasions where we've gone eyeball to eyeball, and those guys, when we go eyeball to eyeball against the nasty de factos like that, they're usually backing up, and it's like it's sword play. And you can frequently tell who's the better swordsman, who is on the offensive, and who is just using their sword to try to avoid getting cut from ribbons. And it's the de facto judges and attorneys and judicial officers that are backing off and using their sword in a purely defensive manner, because when we go up against them and we got the vocabulary, we can cut like a sword. To build on that just briefly a bit further, the Bible in Book of Revelation talks about Jesus, how his words, his tongue cuts like a two-edged sword, the sword that comes out of his mouth and cuts like a two-edged sword. That's what we're doing. We're cutting with our words, because when we take their color of legitimacy away from them, then we are in position to grab the brass ring of power. And probably the office of sheriff is probably the easiest office. Well, it's not easy, but among all of the offices to try to grab that would have any significant authority, that would probably be optimal strategy for producing breakthroughs for all of Americans if in any county, anywhere, we could get that office of sheriff converted from municipal Roman Empire jurisdiction to pure organic, grassroots, accountable common law jurisdiction. I yield.
Well, all I can say to that is I guess I'll have to do a little more studying.
No doubt, studying is good. But if I was, and I could maybe show you the citations or something. If I've got a document printed. It's a PDF file that explains a lot of this. I think I've sent, well, it's been linked in past conference invitations and stuff, Gary. But we can talk about it more. But priority on my list, if I was in your position, and of course I've got more confidence in what I'm saying, and you might not have the confidence, but to my mind, the next step would be to be looking around for 10 people in my county that's
the problem.
Okay. Well, that can be a problem, no doubt. But, and this is where Lewis shines, is if we can start talking in terms of paying people's utility bills and stuff like that, I'm quite comfortable using negotiable instruments to start paying bills for the people in uniform commercial code compliant manners. We can take their economics away from them, and we can start giving economics to our grassroots people that are willing to just stand behind us and say, if it comes down to you being questioned, you got to say, yeah, we support you support the general agenda being said here. Our speaker, Gary Bergman, I'm inclined to believe that he is speaking law in a true manner and that he is exercising proper jurisdiction, and I'm here to support him unless somebody can explain to me why Gary's saying something unlawful. And if you can just get 10 people behind you, standing their ground and being firm, saying things like that, boom, I think you'll take over the government of the whole county.
Yeah, if I can get to 10 people or more, then we could do something.
Yeah.
If I may,
Michael.
Okay, let's just kind of walk this out step by step. Who? And I'm asking questions. I want clarity. who are the 10 people that we're going to get to start this ball rolling? Anybody?
Well, hopefully you're people that's not on the voter registration roll is what I'm looking for.
Well, if I might, I would be less concerned about that because most people on the voter registration rolls are just stupid. And that's not a concern if they've got good hearts. I think the more important concern is whether or not they've got good hearts and they want to make the country a better place. And, and they've got a little bit of courage. We're surrounded by cowards. If they've got enough courage to stand behind you, you're the first one that's going to be packed off to jail if anybody does, Gary. But if you can just get the people to stand behind you, then that will provide the critical mass to where you won't get packed off to jail. So, yeah, I think I made my point there. Are you?
Okay, so we get 10 courageous people with good hearts that want to create good government. Then what do we do after we get these 10 people?
You assemble your county court and you issue a summons to the sheriff to appear before your court.
Okay, and let's say we send the sheriff a summons signed by the 10, and he refuses to come. Which is a likely scenario, unfortunately.
Well, I think I indicated a little bit ago that probably our most powerful tool for actively recruiting people would be to start paying their utility bills. And
but we already got 10 people willing to gather and to help us. 10 good, courageous people wanting good government. We already have that. You said to, send the sheriff a notice. Let's say the sheriff ignores it. Then what do we do? We already have the 10 people.
There's a number of different ways it could play out. We could go directly over to the sheriff's office and attempt to take the control of the office away from the sheriff.
Well, that would get you in jail and probably killed.
Maybe he would go to jail. Maybe he would get killed.
And who's going to put him there?
Pardon me?
Being that he controls the jail, who's going to put him in jail?
We're going to take his jail keys away from him.
Yeah, we got 100 deputies here.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're paying bills for 100 people, and the law is on our side, how dare he refuse our summons? We're the people. Who the hell is he? Or she?
Not these deputies in this area.
Yeah, well, that's so far. That's because the people aren't organized and speaking with a single voice. If we get 100 people, even 10 would shake them up. 100 would be a complete takeover, no doubt. If it does require grassroots organizing in numbers like what Michael's talking about. But when we get the economics and a sufficient quantity of people together, I do believe the control of the office of the sheriff and of the county treasury and of the county courts and the county jail will all drop into our hands like ripe fruit.
I think I'm going to push the idea of having a constable for every precinct, like you said we're entitled to.
Well, you're actually entitled to 10 constables for every precinct. Your precincts are divided into 10 townships. There's a constable for every township there. But your office at the precinct would be justice of the peace, and that would be a general jurisdiction judicial officer that has Sixth Amendment criminal jurisdiction authority. It's a court of general jurisdiction. These are the most powerful courts in the land at the precinct level. They're the 100 courts.
If I may, that according to history and precedent, yes. According to those of us on this call right now, most likely yes. But we have seen in the past 5 decades law does not matter to these pricks. Tyranny is the rule of the day. So we might have all the law and truth on our side, but when it comes down to who is the power and who controls it, they are going to recognize their version, not the true version. That's the enigma we are in.
And their version is the Federal Reserve note.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. So whatever they consider currency, that's who they go for. They back the currency.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only thing I got going for me, hopefully, is if they close down this private prison they built here about 10 years ago, because of Biden shutting down a private prison. Now, if they shut down that private prison and put all those guards out of work, that might be a good deal right there for me to get involved with.
That's a good point. And I'm with Biden on that pursuit as well. That's one area.
Oh, I support it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need those private prisons. In fact, we don't need that many prisons to begin with.
Yeah, and Trump should have done that when Trump was in power. You know, how dare Trump allow Biden to take that righteous mantle of authority? See, now we're confused. Now we don't know whether to trust Trump or Biden, because Biden's doing good stuff in the name of God. Trump should have done that.
Yeah, you know, he's doing a good deal. He's signing all those blank executive orders from that studio.
Did you hear the clip there where he was signing orders and he said, I don't know what I'm signing?
Yeah. What am I signing now?
Yeah.
Then he has that little paper roller with notes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can honestly say that Trump is a pure fascist.
Well, he certainly is a sellout. He sold out his loyal supporters, and very little makes me angrier than these blindly loyal QAnon supporters that, trust the plan, March 4th, then he's going to really take everything back and really bring us the republic back.
They'll have another excuse on March the 4th when it doesn't happen. They'll say it's April the 15th and tax day is. I mean, this Q thing is a total psyop, man. It's from the pit of hell.
Right on, Michael. Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. Well, like I pointed everybody, I said, you want to know who really running the White House? Look at all the military. It's on the different department heads, retired or just became retired. It's just the military that runs this.
Hey, have you heard the scuttlebutt that the orders for that 25,000 troops or however much it was, that came from the Pentagon? It wasn't Pelosi. It wasn't Schumer. It wasn't anybody in civilian government. That was a Pentagon decision, apparently.
That's what we're hearing, but, how well do we trust what we hear?
We're not hearing anything to the contrary.
Just like you're saying that Biden, the Bidens had those keys made up for that corporate office they all had positions with, and they're saying that Chinese company is with the Bidens and formed another corporation to run the District of Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a contract unless the Democratic Senate gives them one.
Yeah.
And like I tell everybody, stay out of the. If you want to go protest, go to Philadelphia and protest at Independence Hall or your state capitals. Stay out of the foreign enclave of the District of Columbia. Once you cross over, you lose all rights.
Well,
it's foreign territory anyway.
Oh.
Say that again, Jim?
Yeah.
I say it's foreign territory anyway.
That's right, and I tell everybody the Supreme Court verifies it, And if you want to know why they use National Guards, because they're considered citizen soldiers, not the regular military. That's why they brought in the National Guard.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask a question for anybody who's on the call here. Are any of you aware of any way that anybody other than the governors or the president can command or direct the presence of any National Guard or other branch of the military?
Well, it seems
some people are saying
the governor has authority to command the National Guard for the state in which he's the governor.
Right. I'm saying,
but he can.
But no, any way that anybody other than the president or the 50 governors can command or direct the presence of any of the National Guard or any member of any of our armed forces. The reason I ask is because some people are actually believing that Pelosi wanted them coming in and called them in, and stupid things like that. So I'm asking, anybody know anybody other than the president or governors can call them or direct
them? The military. The Joint Chiefs can, because remember, they became federalized under the Vietnam War. So the Joint Chiefs, but I can't officially say that's correct. I'd have to go look at my War Powers book and the martial law and see what it says under there to be for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's something up in the air. I wouldn't definitely have a deal, but I would say the president, Joint Chiefs of Staff, or governors. But the Joint Chiefs and the president can override the governor because they became federalized, just like the Coast Guard was put under the command of the Navy. So when they're supposed to be a civilian unit.
Yeah, they're doing what they can to work around posse comitatus, and National Guard and Coast Guard are mechanisms for taking baby steps to infringe upon the authority of the posse comitatus.
Yeah, and then you got the three-city empire, who really controls the three cities. Also, because D.C. is the military arm of the three cities, sovereign cities. So who really controls the military? Well, the Crown of England. So.
Well, I think the Crown of England, technically, they control the banking, isn't it? Religion is in Rome, and banking and economics is in London and England.
Yeah, but they control the banking, but the banking controls the pay of the military or their expenditures. So basically, you're back to London.
Yeah, the money is the root.
That's right.
Certainly money has powerful influence, but I dare suggest that the Pope in Rome, when he barks orders at all the Catholics in the military, so they'll probably follow what the Pope says rather than what their commanding officer says or what the bankers in England say.
Yeah, but remember, like I said, there is a new royal in England, King John. Trump gave him allegiance to it, and so did our military generals gave allegiance to the new king, just like the British military officers gave allegiance to the new king. The queen was kicked out of Buckingham Palace. We're having the illegal parliament in there that's refused, that doesn't want to get out because they know they're all going to go to jail when the new king gets coronated, crowned.
Well, if I may, I think the bottom line is, until we can organize in our own communities, our own county, our own city, our own township, and develop cohesive bodies of courageous men and women, predominantly men, that can speak one voice and do one action. Until we can achieve that, we're in the public hamster wheel, spinning, ever going nowhere, exercising, using our energy, time, and money, going nowhere. And that's what they want us to do. And so far, that's what we've achieved.
I think one of the answers to a lot of things is forming a living history reenactment group to organized people right now, and it's legit. They have a lot of freedom as a living history reenactment group. We at one time had a Spanish-American War group, and we're trying to reactivate that because we're the old West out here. So, you know, it's kind of a good idea to have the last Western troops that we had.
Well, that's
where
I have a similar belief. I mean, in a lot of agreement with you in the theater portion of that act, and in the realm of the judicial courts, you know, to prevent us from being arrested for simulating a legal process, we could simulate it in an educational manner, but simultaneously achieving redress of grievance. You know, we could put on genuine cases with genuine issues, timely issues, contemporary issues, but not, you know, do it as an act of education. Then we could take the educational process to a concluding point of presenting the evidence in a real manner, in a constitutional manner. The process might have been educational, but the end result is demanding real, genuine redress.
Well, that's like the state of Jefferson. You know, Southern Oregon, Northern California there. Well, they're never going to be able to break up with, you know, get away with what they're trying to do. But in the meantime, until they're able to become the state of Jefferson or Republic of Jefferson, they can run it under a common law private members association and run it like the government within their counties.
Is that what they're doing?
No, that's what I suggested. But one of the guys told me that they end up getting some lawyers, and these lawyers, of course, are spinning their wheels trying to say they can do this and that way. Well, if you read the Constitution, it says you can't divide a state to make a state. Now, if they're going to make it another corporate state, maybe they can. But in the meantime, if you want your independence, run it under a common law private members association and give all of your members a contract membership, and that takes them out of the corporate realm. So, I mean, you can have all your businesses all become members. It's like in Texas, you got the dry state, dry counties. You can't have a drink unless you have a membership. So, and there's that medical professionals down there in Texas that's got a common law private member association. All patients are members of the association, and all their doctors, professionals, are not licensed by the state. They don't carry malpractice. They got their own the way they do their money-wise, but they're all patients or members. And they took it to the Supreme Court and state Supreme Courts and won.
Wow. That sounds big, Gary. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and like the guy pointed out, you set up these PMAs not with the IRS like some do. You set it up as a common law PMA. You use the common law to set yours up. Mm-hmm. And you can easily record it in an international common law court, too.
Mm-hmm. You know,
is anyone doing that?
Besides me, no. So, but of course, you know, you try to do something different, and they don't want to listen to you, and they think you're crazy.
What's the United States Assembly doing? What kind of structure do they have?
Well, I don't know, but the state assemblies are saying you can become a lawful state, a constitutional state. Now, wait a minute. If you were never a constitutional state to begin with, you can't automatically become a state assembly saying you're legal. You have to go through the procedures. And you can't go through the procedures because there's not a lawful government. Only a Congress can admit a state. So West Virginia is illegal. Nevada is illegal. All came under martial law. Oklahoma is illegal. It was never supposed to be a state under the Indian treaties, but in 1984, the 5 civilized tribes rewrote their constitution to accept the state of Oklahoma and the United States corporate constitutions. So they sold out. They became corporate entities in 1984. So now we got the state Supreme Court saying, no, wait a minute, in Oklahoma. Indian lands were taken illegally. Well, no shit. It violated the treaty. Of course, the United States Corporation never cared about treaties because they never had anything to do with it. So you got the Indian Act of 1871, which changed treaties with Congress to contracts with the corporate CEO. And people don't know that. So my thing, the way I'm looking at it, until everybody comes up with a good system that's going to work, set it all up under a common law private member association, get the businesses to join. They serve customers that are members. You can have your own gas stations, your own grocery stores, you know, your own Costco, whatever. You can run it like a government, per se, a people's government.
Could I build on that a little bit?
Pardon?
Can I build on that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Yes, go ahead.
It sounds like what you're talking about, private members association. It sounds like that might be a good vehicle to use to try to prime the pump for organizing at our precinct levels. If a volunteer, like Michael's got a list of people in our agenda that are just activists or auditors or I forget what all terms Michael was using there, but just somebody that's volunteering to be a leadership, a temporary leader, pro tem leader of the precinct, a precinct captain, temporary, nonpartisan. It's not for the Republican or the Democratic Party. Is where things are all goofing up, but for everybody.
Right.
And they're under. It would seem to me that your private members association could be pursuing a whole common law agenda, and the activist that's assuming the leadership position there could be pushing the envelope with the de factos with the technology that you're bringing to the table of about private membership associations. Does that sound good, Gary?
Yeah, and you know, we kind of wrote our own constitution because that's going to be like, you got to have that in your membership contract, which basically is our Bill of Rights, but we added a few other things. But we also did away with the name states or counties, which the corporate uses. We called our counties, which would be states within the Nevada Republic, we called them cantons. We used some of the Swiss constitution. We took a few things out of the Swiss Constitution.
Well,
so we didn't restrict ourselves strictly to the U.S. Constitution. We noticed some good things out of other constitutions.
Mm-hmm. So you quit using the word counties?
Yeah, if we're referring to a county, we're saying a canton. So it doesn't conflict. That's another thing.
I think I mentioned before that word county is actually from French administrative law, which is a version of municipal law, and a better alternative word than county or even canton, I suggest, would be shire, the shire of the sheriff. Anyway, there's lots of different ways it can break, and this is a good brainstorming session. I'm glad you guys are sharing an intelligent conversation with me about all this. This is a good group discussion. I'm glad we're having it.
Somebody dropped off, didn't they?
I think we got Cliff from Michigan again, Lewis's friend here. How you doing, Cliff?
Oh,
I'm doing fine there, Charles.
Thank you. Yeah, glad you're increasing our numbers here, Cliff. We're chewing on the bone a little bit. You feel free to jump in anytime.
You know I know, but you make me welcome all the time.
Thank you.
That's like in the Nevada Constitution, militia is defined as their National Guard. And militia cannot parade in public. But there's no stipulations regarding a reenactment group, a living history group. So that's what we kind of did, a living history group called the First Volunteer Mounted Rifles. And we're using basically what they wore back in the 1898s, and we're using lever action rifles and shotguns and Colt revolvers. And we're using the insignia, which is black, to put on our hats. The braids are black, suspenders are black, belts are black, the scarf is black. That tells you it's a militia. But we do a living history. We got one guy that's good at doing the Dutch ovens, and he's also a doctor. So, I mean, that's the way to have a militia, but have it as a living history group and tell. And that's one way you can use to recruit people into it, saying we're a living history group.
Well, you know we're going to have to resort to more direct confrontation eventually. Yeah.
So it's a good idea that keeps everybody protected. Now, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Front Sight, which is right south of us. It's a professional weapons training facility and some other stuff. And when we were doing our reenactment group, we were giving people a lifetime membership because one of the guys was high up in the deal, and he was able to give out free lifetime membership, which is a $2,000 value for our members to go over there and get good on their weaponry and other things they had, like repelling, a few other things.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm glad you're thinking in broad terms here, Gary, and putting lots of different undercurrents that are resources that are available to us on the table so that we can be aware of them. That $2,000 value, that could be the source of an alternative currency. Whoever's in position of leadership there, they could issue credits up to $2,000 value. I would prefer to not even word it in terms of dollars. I'd talk about grams of silver, but approximately the equal amount of silver as $2,000. But at that point, see, you can issue credit instruments based upon the alternative currency that your militia organizing group, the training center there, is producing. And that can be the basis of a currency to pay off people's utility bills and things like that. It can be real-time, cutting-edge economic and peace officer supportive currency.
If I may. May I?
Yeah.
Were you done, Charles? I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little more on the private membership association. I've got some information on it myself. Let me just read this briefly. It's a very short paragraph. It says, even during intense litigation, the court consistently upheld the status of the private membership association, consequently making it a cornerstone of legal arguments used by the civil rights movement. Though the Constitution does not specifically enshrine private membership associations, the Supreme Court describes the right and power to associate, including under private membership association, as equal to free speech. I believe this is a clear vehicle that we could climb on board and use to navigate these dangerous territory that we're in here.
Yeah, I mean, because you can, like I said, until you get, because to have authority, you need some backing. And backing, even though, we have a problem with Kevin Annett up there in Canada, we still got that court, and it's recognized it has charters in other nations. So you can get them to help back you and get recognized.
Well, Kevin Annett is... if that's the best we can do, we've got problems. I have some respect for him, but a lot of what... Well,
see, he doesn't really have that much control per se in the rest of the court or the other charter courts. He's over there in that Republic of Contata that he's forming over in British Columbia now. And I deal strictly with the main court or one of the other courts. Like in Austria, they have a real nice court over there in Italy. In fact, Italy asked me to be on one of their common law universities staff, and I said, well, I'm over here in America. Oh, we just want your name on it. Okay, you know. So I put my name out there in the Nevada Republic, even if sometimes it's just a Facebook knowledge, but I get around the world. I get the name Nevada Republic recognized, and it's flagged around the world, the globe. I also have 2 Japanese reporters from the Japanese Free Press. Whenever I put out a good email or something, I always send them copies of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's, if I may,
go ahead.
If I may elaborate a little further, I'd like to take it to the next step. It gets a little interesting here.
Okay.
Regarding the applications, the variety of applications, the use for private membership associations has been to shield organization or practitioners from legal scrutiny. In regards to alternative medicine and healthcare, private membership associations have opted to induct their patients into the organization to streamline care and get around prohibitive and costly regulation. Under the First and 14th Amendment and equivalent state constitutional provisions, private membership associations such as independent alternative medical practitioners can offer me members, patients, in parentheses, benefits and services without the scrutiny of the state and federal agencies. So it acts as a legal shield, a cover, if you would.
Well, but what is law? You know, in order for these corporate courts to have jurisdiction over you, they got to have a contract. The sheriff's department has to have a contract. Everybody has to have a contract, the Supreme Court says, because they're not legit. Well, so the contract is our controlling item. So if all our members have contracts that are membership contracts, that overrides those other authorities, because now we have our own courts, we have our own marshals, we have our own doctors, our own stores. You know, whatever we wanted to do, we can. It's unlimited what we could do with that.
Yeah, it is.
I'd like to suggest that none of the 3,000 or so sheriffs in the USA need a contract in order to have courts enforce, support their functions as peace officers. They've got inherent duties to and rights to keep the peace in the county and to exercise force in the county if and when necessary in order to keep the peace. And they don't need a contract to do so. That's common law jurisdiction. Of course, most of them are indoctrinated to function and think like municipal franchisees. And
right.
Yeah, and so that's the problem, the learning curve that we got to get them educated past if they're at all inclined in a righteous direction. But yeah, those sheriffs have a lot more power than what most of them think they've got. And you know, if we could start educating the sheriffs, the good ones, we could start sending out massive letters to all of the 3,000 sheriffs in the USA. And if we only had 20 of them that responded favorably, boom, we could start going to town with those 20, and it would produce such a benefit in those 20 counties that soon thereafter everybody would start following, I believe.
Well, that'd be nice.
Let me read a small additional portion here. It goes on to say, private membership associations are still afforded all the rights and freedoms of an American citizen, including the right to due process, should state official make inquiries into their operation and organization. So,
right. But we got to make sure we always add the word common law, PMA, on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's like our flag. We have one flag without, just with the flag itself, but there's another flag in the lower right-hand corner. We got the initials CLPMA.
Mm-hmm.
So until we get until we become a real republic, we're going to put that CLPMA on there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just your stepping stone. That's just like Texas. If Texas would have did this years ago, when they tried to be a republic again and formed a common law, well, it would have been 40 years now, I think. They would have been running, basically, would have took over the state.
Mm-hmm. In the wording there, I would try to, when you're talking about common law, PMA, I would try to throw in the word precinct there to just really give it some tangible, real-world grounding, because precincts are already mapped out all across the USA, and they're recognized. Right. And as a matter of well-established law, the sheriff has no jurisdiction in there, and local city police officers, they can be told to stay out. They can be told that we've got enough town constables here in our precinct-level jurisdiction, PMA, that if we need your help, we'll call you, and we'll ask you, and we'll pay for it in a separate accounting. Send us a bill if we need your services. We probably won't. And at that point, you're reducing the police power over you. That police power that all of the municipalities are exercising with their local municipal police forces, you look up the definition of the word police power, that's the Supreme Court, that's all dependent upon a corrupted definition of the 10th Amendment from the United States Supreme Court, whereunder they say that, they pervertedly say that the people, in all of their wisdom in the Constitutional Convention that was controlled by Alexander Hamilton and George Washington and the other high-level Freemasons, that Constitutional Convention resulted in the 10th Amendment, which authorized the people to delegate their authority to the states, to create an environment in states wherein each of the states can create their own jackbooted Nazi military regimes because of liberty of the states. And so the federal government doesn't have any authority because of the 10th Amendment to interfere when the states start establishing their own jackbooted Nazi military dictatorships. That policy comes from a perverted U.S. Supreme Court interpretation of the meaning of the 10th Amendment. Thereby, they establish the local police power. And they're under the whole chain of command goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court for their crooked, forked-tongued lawyers smiling at us and say, well, we got the right to do this. Supreme Court ruled so. But it's all top-down authoritarian, and if you juxtapose that to the town constable peace officer thing, where the 10% of the precinct, a local township jurisdiction of approximately 10 households of 10 qualified electors, you look at that, and they elect their own town constable that's directly accountable to them. He's also the tithing man. He collects all the taxes or tithings or whatever you want to call them for economic necessities for the community local government. That is so superior to the police power that, Lewis and a number of us have been talking about the whole movement that other people are talking about too, mostly on the left, about abolish the police. And all kinds of misguided right-wingers are saying, oh no, we need the police. They got to be able to have their guns to protect us because we're too stupid to protect ourselves. They don't really say that, but that's the import of their positioning. And I'm sorry, at this particular juncture, the lefties are ahead of the right-wingers because, the lefties instinctively know that we don't need that military jackbooted police force. And enlightened right-wingers should be picking up on it. Well, yeah, our local town constables can assume all of those duties, and we don't really need to abolish the police, but we need to get our peace officers up and running and then invite the police officers to accept a 10% raise in their salary and standard of living and come on over and be a local town peace officer instead of a local municipal franchisee obedient slave master police officer.
Security force.
Well, Yeah, I hope I'm making sense. I get so angry I kind of lose my wording sometimes. I really dislike police officers. I'm driving around with expired Oregon plates here in Texas. I'm worried about getting busted every time I drive out.
Well, you need to get hold of that guy in Northern Nevada that No More Government, I think it is. He has his own plates and ID cards.
Well. I've made some waves here in the local county, and I kind of think I've sparked their radar. And I've been here over a year now, and they seem to be leaving me alone. And I'm looking for the revolution. I don't want just half a loaf. I want the whole system to be converted to common law government here, and then it won't matter what I got on my license plate.
Right.
Yeah. Of
well,
course,
I'm trying hard to get people.
Go ahead.
I try hard to get people to take down the battle flags and start flying the civil flag or fly the John Paul Jones SURPA flag, his naval battle flag, because I use that as a symbol, and it's got stripes that are red, white, and blue, and it has a 8-pointed star on it. But the thing is, I can tell everybody, a lot of people don't know about John Paul Jones in his battle off France when his ship was sinking. What was his famous words?
Give me liberty or give me death? I don't know.
No, the British commander asked him if he's ready to surrender. He says, I have not yet begun to fight. And his men swung over on the yardarms and captured the British frigate. And just then the Bonhomme Richard sunk. His ship sunk. But it was, I have not yet begun to fight. So that's a perfect slogan. And below it, I fly the black with the gold copperhead, do not tread on me.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the flags I fly. Well, on the front, I fly my the civil flag and the Pennsylvania Commonwealth flag. I was born in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So
I know one thing. I no longer pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
No.
The municipal corporation. Technically speaking, you look in Black's Law Dictionary, the definition of the state is a community of people bound together by common law habits and customs. And I believe that's a good thing. Pardon me? Go ahead.
The name United was never meant to be part of the definition for the country. It's always supposed to be a small U. So I said the other way to say it is the states of America united within a confederation, because we are a confederation of independent state republics. We're the states of America.
Good choice of words, Gary.
So like I said, why do you think the southern states took that name, the Confederate States of America? Because they had took the Articles of Confederation with them.
Yeah, well, you know, they established a similar municipal form of government. They had separation of powers. There was no separation of powers under the Articles of Confederation.
Well, I'm just saying, they didn't become they didn't become a really, per se, Articles of Confederation, but the idea.
No, that whole thing was engineered on both sides by high-level Masons.
Oh, I believe it.
Hey, Charles, I'm going to have to get off here. This is Michael in Florida. I'm sorry, and it was good meeting you, Gary. And
yeah, Michael, yeah.
Hope to hear you again on there. It was a pleasure talking with you, sir.
All right.
I'm glad you participated here tonight, Michael. I think that we accomplished a lot of good here tonight.
All right. Sounds good, Charles. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah.
And Charles Cliff, I got to have
a nice weekend.
What's that? Somebody say something?
Cliff, did you say something?
Yes, sir. I was saying I got a hot one before we hang up.
Yeah.
I didn't know, does anybody know Harry Fullerton in Nevada? He ran a common law court.
I've heard of him. I've talked with him before in phone conferences.
Okay, well, I've dealt with him. I had a whole, got to be at least 50 people. We went out to Nevada and went through the common law court. And Harry's well-versed in all that, but I heard he allegedly moved to Tennessee, and I haven't been able to catch up with him yet. Now, he could take all these groups to another level.
Yeah, that'd been great.
Yeah,
I mean, regular guy. You can't get along with Harry, I got a problem with you.
Harry is a good guy. I do think that we can achieve consensus between him and me.
Yes. Yeah. Harry gave us the welcome mat. I mean, he didn't hold nothing back. He said, look, if you guys want to run a common law court in Michigan, I'll give you the paperwork to do it. And we got all the way down to the 5-yard line, and some people started acting ugly, and I changed my mind. I said, I don't think I bet not do this.
Well, please nurture that communication. If you can reestablish relations with Harry, that'd be great, Cliff.
Yeah, I've been trying to catch up with him for at least a couple of years now, but nobody's responded back.
Okay. Yeah, it's been probably that long since I've talked to him, too.
Yeah, and, they got another common law court in Minnesota and another one in New Jersey. And I don't know how to get directly a hold of them, but they're supposed to be running a court once a month. And they did everything Harry was doing. And, I mean, he ran you through the court, weddings, all that, canceled all your documents. And, I mean, legitimately, he did it all, and we've never had no problem.
Well, we can do the same thing in this conference.
Yes, sir, we can. Yes. Well, like I said, we catch up with Harry. I'd like to see him, because I know he's still doing it. I'd like to see him be a participant if he could, because he can help us out 100%.
That sounds like a great idea, Cliff.
Yeah, and I'll put
I had an idea of forming a North American Confederation of Common Law Courts or states as an association.
Would that include Canada?
Yeah, why not? Canada's allowed to be a state in this country, according to our Constitution.
And they've got equally as deep common law roots as we do. So,
yeah. I ain't got no problem with it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Together with, yeah. So we even made up a nice logo for it, but that hasn't pursued any further. I haven't got nobody to act with me.
Well, we're going to get some traction here sometime soon, Gary. I know it.
Yes, I can tell.
Well, that's what my spiritual advisor says. Things are coming up to a head real quick. So we'll see what happens. They said the people will be out there searching for people like us because they've had enough of the lies.
Yes, sir.
That's a silver lining to the cycle. Now at least people are getting more woken up, and they're ready to look at the more radical solutions. Instead of, the Democrat or the Republican Party ain't going to save them anymore, and that's becoming rudely obvious to them now. And so, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's like that. Our flag, we took off the Nevada Republic from one of our editions of the flag, and we put the Kingdom of God. Because that's what we're working for, to restore his kingdoms.
Yes. I like it already.
So, yeah. So, Nevada Republic is just part of as many kingdoms here on earth. So that's what I preach it.
Very good, Gary. Yeah, you sound like you're doing God's work to me.
Yeah, I do. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I said, I put the word out. I said, well, let me know when I can move back to the Midwest. Well, they said, you ain't moving nowhere for a while. God wants you to stay right there. I said, okay, I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
So, well, okay, gentlemen, I better push on out here too.
All right, I guess we ought to bring it to a close here. Is there any closing comments from anybody here before we shut it down?
No, I'm satisfied, Charles. All
right. I'm really glad you're participating here, Cliff. And good to hear you, Jim. And Gary, excellent community that we brought together here. I think we accomplished a lot of good tonight.
Yeah, if anybody wants to see what we do on our show, you can go to Nevada Republic Network on Facebook or YouTube. In fact, you can see the flag too. Nevada Republic Network.
Okay, that's good.
Did I show your schedules for your radio shows?
We're going to cut it down to Wednesdays at 6 o'clock in the evening. And we're going to change the name. We're going to take away the KRJ and 7th Amendment Hour and just come NREN, Nevada Republic Education Network.
Is that 6 p.m. Pacific time? What time zone is that?
Yeah, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's right to everybody. Just go to Facebook or YouTube. You can see the videos there of the show, and you know, play it back, whatever. And that's everybody. If you want to get a copy of the script, you just go to Nevada Republic Network at gmail.com. Send us your email, and then we'll send you a copy of the script the same day or before when we get the script done.
Mm-hmm.
So people can have reference when to look things up. So.
All right. Yeah, that sounds great, Gary.
Yeah, I like this last half of this conference today.
Less intense.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah. No pain, no gain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, gentlemen, you all have a nice weekend. Or next week.
All right, you too. All right, Charles, I'll be talking with you, buddy.
All right, take care, Cliff.
Okay,
good night, Mike.
Take it easy,
take care.
Okay.
Jim.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Charles, I want to say thank you for keeping me on your email list and keeping me apprised of what's here. And I wanted to apologize that I haven't been able to participate in any significant manner.
Well, don't cry any crocodile tears over it. You're here now. That's the important thing.
I'm here. Yeah, for whatever that's worth, I'm here. Yeah.
All right, brother.
Appreciate so much what you guys are doing. It's
all right.
It continues to keep me hopeful for the country.
Yeah, optimistic. Yes, positive. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I know good things.
Reinforces our faith that God is working for America to help us bring truth and justice. We're New Jerusalem here. Yeah, we're doing good.
I know there's a lot of really iffy stuff being thrown around here and there, you know, a lot of disinfo, bad info, whatever you want to call it, a lot of fertilizer that's intentional, and there's good reasons for some of it, and there's not so good reasons, some really bad reasons. But I, as Paul Crouch used to say, I know in my knower that this nation is here to stay as a nation of free people. And, you know, just a comment, I was thinking the term Civil War. Here's an example, an outtake from a Civil War. Excuse me, sir, but would you please step out to where I can draw a good bead on you so I can shoot you?
We got to be civilized about this. Why aren't you being civilized? Why don't you let me draw a good bead on you so I can shoot you like a good civilized man?
Yeah, that would be a civil war, you know. But I can only imagine the British doing that, you know, while they're wearing the red coats.
Yeah. Talk about institutionalized stupidity.
Amen. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, an oxymoron if there ever was one, Civil War, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, God bless you, brother. It's good to hear your voice again, and thank you again for what you guys are doing, and I'll let you get back to it.
All right. My computer's kind of froze up here, but my phone's still working. I'm going to have to reboot my computer interface here. I don't know if I'll lose contact, but I'm going to start shutting down my computer, and that might cause the whole thing to clunkily collapse. I don't know. But I'm going to hang on the phone line here just in case I need that to restart my computer here and log out properly. But looking forward to our next conference with you here, Jim. Anybody else that's still on? I can't tell, but I'm looking forward to our next conference, probably Monday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I guess that's 4 p.m. Pacific Time.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk with you later, man. Good luck. I know that computer will straighten right up.
Love positive thinking there, Brother Jim.
Yeah. Well, even if it is Linux.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Take it easy. Bye.